Badass Records podcast, where we talk about you and some of your favorite music. New episodes come out Thursdays. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Badass Records Podcast at gmail.com if you'd like to do an in-person episode with me. It's Badass Records Podcast at gmail.com. If you hit the site, badassrecordspodcast.com, make sure you click on the merch tab. And you can find everything from stainless steel tumblers to coffee mugs to beanies, baseball caps, long sleeve tees, short sleeve tees, hoodies, stickers, and an assortment of custom tees that we have had made. So appreciate you stopping by. Hope you enjoy the show. So what do we say? So 79, episode 79, Badass Records Podcast. The 22-year-old Dane Bridges in the house. And we connected because you're a member of Chowk, correct? Playing bass with Jason Bice and Zach Hodson on drums. That's right?
Yes.
Right? Okay. Cool. Well, I appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. So, where are the spots for folks to learn about Chowk? Keeping the Bandcamp, obviously. What are the socials and ways to be in the know?
Yeah, so we I think we promote the most on our Instagram page.
Okay.
On that Instagram page, I'm pretty sure it's either chowk.band or chowk_band.
Yeah.
The other.
Mm-hmm.
And if you find it, there's a link tree in the bio. If you hit that, it'll give you the lowdown on all of our
And
socials.
it's CHOWK,
Yes.
right? And
Yep.
Jason told me the meaning, and it was very cool, but I forgot already.
Yeah, so it's a Hindi term.
Yes.
For means a handful of things, but the crossing of paths.
Awesome.
Also roundabout, also marketplace. So a
Okay.
handful of things.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was something that came up in conversation. I think Jason had mentioned that he was originally thinking about like chalk, like a Jayhawk kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then he was like, what if I switch some letters around? And
Funny.
the A got switched out for an O, and he was like, oh, that actually means something. And it just so happened to sort of connect with how we came together.
Yeah, which was
initially. We met at a show at Manor Records.
Where's that?
Which is no longer around.
Okay.
Unfortunately. But it was Manor Records is a nonprofit organization. They do all kinds of things. Like I think they do fundraisers. But it was a record store essentially.
Okay.
/ coffee shop as well.
Nice. Where?
And man, that whole area, I don't go there a lot, but I want to say more west of Kansas City. I could be totally wrong. Not Westport though.
Right.
But in that sort of
Interesting.
direction.
Okay.
I remember it being about 45 minutes from Grain Valley, if that's anything to go off of.
Sure.
But it was a cool spot. It just wasn't in a very good hub. Like you didn't see a lot of people passing through.
Right.
I think that may have been one possible issue for them is they, also being a nonprofit, you have to find interesting ways to have revenue, to keep afloat. And they couldn't keep the brick and mortar thing going, but they're still going strong as a company though.
Oh.
And they do like studio sessions every now and then. They do a lot of work to boost artists' presence in the city. And so
Manor Records.
Manor
MANOR.
MANOR. Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's cool. And you were going there to see who?
So I was playing there with my other band, Major Matt Mason.
Major Matt Mason. That feels a little bit familiar.
Yeah, Major Matt Mason USA. It's a project of Matthew Roth.
Okay.
And he's originally out of New York. and he came out of the what's called the anti-folk scene out there, and
Okay.
it's a very niche genre
Sure. Yeah.
of like, I have no idea how to talk about it. It's almost like satirical, but semi like a poetic like folk music.
Okay.
You know, it's not. I was gonna say something like anti-establishment, but it's not really like that. It's there. You might come across some songs that are like,
Okay.
you know, against certain things, but it's a lot of like really unique use of like storytelling and rhymes, and
Huh.
it's very pleasing to listen to.
Okay.
I find, but there's tons of different iterations of it, though. I have no idea if Matt's iteration is the all-encompassing
Okay.
feel, or if that's just one thing. But that's where he started in the early mid '90s or so, and he was doing really well up there. And I forget when he moved to KC. I want to say between 2011 and 2015.
Okay.
Um,
So you're playing
and
bass in this whatever iteration at
yeah.
Manor Records when they have a brick and mortar.
Yep.
Jason's there to see
Yep.
your show, your set.
And he was also an opener.
Oh,
So
nice. Was he solo?
He played, yeah, by himself with just electric guitar and vocals.
Okay.
And I really resonated with his songwriting.
Really?
I felt that, you know, we didn't know each other at all.
Yeah.
Matt had mentioned that they knew each other somewhat. But I'm in the audience, like way far back, just listening, and it's a very wholesome environment. Everybody is deeply invested in the music going on, and you can tell because they're so quiet. Like
Oh, wow.
right when the music starts, the lights go dim, and everybody's just like
How many
like
folks are we talking, do you think?
I'd say 30, 50-ish.
Okay. Okay. And did you wind up chatting after
and
his set?
Yeah, I approached him. I just told him I really liked his set.
Cool.
It was pretty touching because I love any sort of songwriting that involves storytelling.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
Anything where I'm listening to it, if it takes me to a place, or if it makes me want to be in a place,
Yeah.
then that's immediately a win. And so,
I'm assuming he received your compliment warmly, and eventually you guys connected, and
yeah.
and then how did the third piece come in?
It was a little bit after I had gotten with Jason. Jason texted me one day. He was like, it's okay if you're busy, but I wanted to connect and see if you wanted to help me with some bass stuff for some new songs I'm writing. One thing sort of for context of how the project kind of came to fruition to begin with is I get the idea that Jason was approached by a lot of people throughout his solo sets, a lot of people who were saying, you need a band.
Okay.
As a compliment. Sometimes I think for some venues it may have been like a dude, if you want to come back, you need a band or something like that. That happened maybe a couple times. But it was more just, your stuff is so good, think about how much better it could be.
But that's also hopefully the venue and whoever's booking knows how things work.
Sure.
But that's that's a different kind of emotionally plugged in space to be in as a show goer, as an audience member, when it's one person and their guitar and the microphone. I mean, it's not like a band is up. It's just, I don't know why it's different, but it's just more intimate.
Yeah. That was the same word I was going to use.
Okay.
You feel a little bit, very direct when it's one person, and
Yeah.
you've got one thing to focus on,
Yeah.
pros and cons to each approach,
Of course.
And I think it was like so many people loved his set. Like, I heard compliments all across the board, but there were the handful of people that were just, and me included, I was back there sort of pondering. I was like, I wonder what drums would sound like here. Or like, maybe a certain passage through a song, I'm just like, I'm hearing a harmony that's not there,
Nice.
something like that. And maybe that was me already trying to like creatively get involved with them subconsciously. I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, it just happened that the the paths crossed
Yeah.
again.
So he hits you up and says, "You want to help me with some bass stuff?"
Yeah, and it was uh, he's out in Lawrence.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so a drive for me from Grain Valley, but I didn't mind at all because for Major Matt Mason, I already drive about 45 minutes.
Okay.
And so for Lawrence, it's about an hour flat, so
Sure.
not too bad. And so I get there first time, and he shows me maybe 6 or 7 songs, some of which he played at Manor that I was somewhat familiar with,
Uh-huh.
some of which were totally new to me,
And it's just the two of you?
just the two of
He's
us.
playing and you're listening.
Yep, and he gives me a pen and paper, and he's like, "Let me know if you need this," and I just watched him play, and I'm just taking in the structure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And writing down chords and measures and like how long
Wow.
he's playing everything. By the end of the night, I had at least a rough chart of every song.
Awesome.
And so then I could go home and I can set a tempo, and then play my bass along with it. Without drums, it sounded somewhat rough trying to get things to mesh.
Sure.
Because you don't really have any sense of rhythm.
It's like a backbone if we didn't have spines.
Absolutely, just jelly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it was really fun. I came up with some ideas on the spot that he really enjoyed, and it was enough for him to want me back another time. And so I would say we met at his house maybe about 4 or 5 times.
Now all of this is like this calendar year, right? I mean, it's like still really fresh.
Yeah, totally fresh.
So you guys hook up, and then eventually drum piece comes in. And how did that happen?
We were tapping into a lot of drummers from the get-go. Just putting posts out on our Instagram and Facebook, both our personal pages and also the newly started band page, just like, hey, we're open to a drummer, someone who's open to playing both like softer stuff and harder stuff, someone who's a bit versatile in the dynamics department.
Yeah.
And so I know there were a couple people we were emailing with. It was mainly Jason that was handling the emails for the most part, but I think it was I forget if it was Zach who reached out to us or Jason who reached out to him. I'm not sure, but he was interested in starting with us. And so we got a practice together at his house shortly after. It took a little bit.
Jason?
At Zach's house.
Okay.
And conveniently, Zach lives in Lee Summit. So convenient for me, not so convenient for Jason.
And Jason's went.
Exactly, yeah. And Jason's been a trooper. He hasn't had a huge problem with it. And, I'm still open to meeting at his house if I need to.
Sure.
Not a big deal. But he was, like, really nice enough to give me gas money sometimes, and he totally doesn't need to do that.
Right.
And he's a great cook, too.
Jason is?
Yeah.
Okay.
He would usually have dinner ready when I got there, which was a plus, but also he doesn't need to do that. It's just wonderful.
Right.
He has amazing hospitality, and
I had
awesome.
somebody, all the way back to episode 11. He's gigged. We went to middle school and high school together, and he still gigs, and but he was talking about when he would get together with, I think, the most recent outfit he was a part of. It was like, okay, we got to circle an hour on the calendar that we can all make happen because everybody's whatever job, kids, et cetera, et cetera. Yes. So we're squeezing in this hour or whatever, and then it became somebody had the idea like we should have a meal, together and then practice and then have a meal, whatever the order was, and it just changed everything completely to just as the saying goes, break bread with people that you're invested in. And, so that's cool. That's good to know. He, you mentioned this feeling of wholesome at his, when you saw him play, like he sort of exuded that in the chair, and then sometimes his posts feel that way too. Like it just kind of, I don't know. It's very cool and unique, I might add. So you're born, raised in Green Valley?
Hmm.
Okay. Siblings?
Brother and sister.
Okay. And where do you fit?
I am youngest.
You're the youngest.
Hmm.
Okay. And do you know how your folks met?
High school.
Really?
Hmm.
Wow. Are
Yeah.
also from the area?
Yes.
Okay.
My biological mom and dad are now separated, but they met in high school,
Okay.
and that's they got married pretty quick
Yeah,
after,
sure.
and they had all three kids, and separated when I don't know when I was still a baby,
Okay.
and but yeah, both in the Independence area is where they came
Okay,
from.
right on.
Mhm.
So then are you so you're probably too little to have memories of them together or no?
Yeah, I
Okay. So then
don't
are
really
you
have any.
doing the household split thing?
I was,
Okay.
yeah.
And then are they each music people? Are they putting on music in their homes?
Well, they are not musicians, but
Right.
they are definitely music listeners for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what was mom and dad into?
So I remember most. There were two sides of it because it was mom didn't listen to a lot of music in the house. It was usually always in the car.
Yeah.
With dad, it was getting blasted in the house
Okay.
quite a lot. And so with dad, it was in the house. It was a lot of grunge. It was
Okay. Interesting.
Nirvana, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains. Um, his favorite band's Rush, though, so
Cool.
tons of Rush.
Cool.
And
I mean, for me, I love Rush. So
I do too.
okay.
Tool.
Nice.
Um, any.
All of this is like, I could smell it on your list. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
we'll get to that. But
Offshoots for sure. Yeah, and so there's probably tons of other things. He showed me. I remember for some reason there's this vivid memory, and I don't know why this in particular is what I remember because I don't hear him listening to this very often. But I remember coming into the garage. That was where his big stereo was, and he was blasting David Bowie's Space Oddity.
oh
um,
wow.
and that and he was like very passionate about that at the time, and he was like, you know who this is, and it's like telling me all about it, and I was like really little at the time, and I was like whatever, kind of, I wasn't at that point connecting the dots musically in my head yet.
Sure.
The stuff was getting stuck in my head for
Yeah.
sure, but
Yeah.
I wasn't like invested yet.
Okay.
It was like, yeah, that's bouncing around in there, but it
I
didn't click yet.
you know, I'm easily double your age. So oldies, in the car with my mom as a kid. At some point, I'm listening to classic rock and then I start a collection. I start buying my own music, and it's like I'm picking stuff up, and retaining it, and I'm fascinated. I'm intrigued by it, and like seldom do I hear something on the FM dial that like is unfamiliar or really grabs me.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget the first time like hearing Space Oddity and being like, like I want to cry. That was because it's sad and so beautiful and like who is this David Bowie guy? I mean, so it's
I feel like Bowie would have that effect all around.
yeah, yeah.
Whatever song it was.
Okay, so mom's playing music in the car, dad's got a stereo in the garage.
Yeah, and so mom's music, 80s new wave all
Sure.
the way.
Yeah.
Like Talking Heads.
Nice.
Depeche Mode, lots
Okay.
of that.
Yeah.
Devo.
Nice.
Trying to remember.
So if you're I guess they probably haven't had like need to interact much if you're, 4+ years removed from graduating high school. Are they do they run into each other? Are they cordial?
They get along.
Okay, cool.
They're
Nice.
still friends.
Okay, right on.
Which really helps. There was never. I think their separation they've made clear was very like amicable. They were mutually both accepting of it. And I think that's the best way it could
Good.
have gone.
Hats off to mom and dad. I
Yeah,
mean,
absolutely. And so it, even though I don't remember the actual separation, and it was so early to where it didn't have a huge effect on my mental
that
state,
you know
as
of
far as
yet.
I know, as far as I know, right? But it probably, helps the most that they remained in contact so easily, and
Right.
they had no problem. Like, there were no custody issues. It was like there was an agreement in place where, like, it was me, forget, at mom's like Tuesdays through Thursdays or something, and dad's on the other days. It was kind of interchangeable. They weren't strict about it. They weren't
Okay.
like, yeah, and I'm grateful for that too. There was
So
never
did
any
you
conflict.
like always roll with whatever schedule they had arranged, or as you got older, did you start to say, "Hey, this I want to make some tweaks here and there," or how did that go?
I I sat with the schedule pretty consistently up until about middle school, maybe early high school
Okay.
is when stuck with dad a little more often.
Oh, okay.
Which, nothing against mom at all. It was just a lot of my stuff was at dad's house.
Interesting.
So, like,
And what kind of
my
distance are we talking between the two homes?
less than a few blocks.
Oh, nice. Very
So
nice.
that
Okay.
wasn't. I mean, I guess earlier on, my mom lived in Independence,
Okay.
for a little bit, but then she found a place in Grand Valley very
Okay.
close to dad.
And so when that was happening, did she just roll with it? Did it? I mean,
she was okay with
okay,
it.
cool.
I think she probably missed me quite a bit.
Yeah.
Still misses me
Yeah.
today. And
Right.
my resolution of sorts this year, is to see her at least once or twice a month, maybe more.
Okay.
Don't know if I'm holding to it yet. I can't quite tell.
I was just gonna say we're just crossed the halfway point of the year. How you
but
doing?
I've seen her more than I expected this year, which
Cool.
is good.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
Because I know, like, it's at the point where, all three kids are almost totally separated from the parents in terms of independence.
Right.
And I know that's. I'm not a parent, so I don't know, but I know that's probably not easy.
Yeah. I mean, I'm split right down the middle, and that I'm curious of actually how it went for you, and that's on the horizon for me. My kids are 12 and 9, and their mom's a block away. I mean, and we have a whole bunch of transitions across the week. So, but so mom, okay, got a feel for what dad's into and what mom's into. Neither are musicians yet. At 20, 21, 22, you're gigging in one outfit and being approached or by a second to play an instrument. When did you first pick one up? I mean, what's your introduction to?
So, I guess first musical notes played were probably 2012.
Okay.
On the trumpet.
Okay.
With played in the school band.
Sure.
And that was fine.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the instrument.
Yeah.
I did not enjoy the instruction.
Okay.
So
did you practice at home?
I did.
And at both homes?
Yeah. I found that not as much as they wanted me to, but I did.
Okay.
They had really strict things in place about practice. They would have us take home these sheets that were almost like checklists.
The band at school? Okay.
Instructors would have us take home this sheet, and we would essentially have to verify that we practiced X amount of things and then have it signed by our parents, and then turn that in, and that would be like, yes, I practiced,
Okay.
And if you did not get that sheet turned in, then they would dock the hell out of your grade.
Sure.
And assume that you didn't practice at all, which
Right.
was just tough because, I mean, I wasn't on top of the papers, but I do remember practicing.
Right,
So
right.
that was a thing where I can't prove it to them.
Right.
So I kind of get it, but it felt to me a little bit boxing in-esque, and I think that was one of the first things where I was like,
This is art, man. Like, don't try to
Yeah.
fit it into this.
yeah, and
I don't know.
I didn't know why I was there to begin with necessarily, because at this point in time, still was not listening to music.
Interesting.
I was just doing it because it was a thing to do.
Okay.
And they had approached us. At some point, the band directors approached many classrooms, and they're like, "We're putting people together for the band. Sign this paper and put your top 3 instruments on there, and we'll get back to you and get you signed up and stuff." And
Was
so,
trumpet one of your top 3?
Yeah, so I did. I think it was trumpet, trombone, and maybe clarinet.
Okay.
A woodwind.
Yeah, yeah.
Woodwinds were totally packed and full. There was no room
for
those. Actually, I wanted to do percussion. Somewhere on that list, I put a percussive.
All that rush.
Yes, right. I definitely liked the idea of drumming to a degree, but that was full too. Very popular part of the band. And so I ended up on trumpet, which I wasn't opposed to. Once you get to feeling that instrument, it tends to be quite simple because there's only 3 little things you can press down and only so many combinations until you've run out. Right?
I feel like Miles Davis is rolling in his grave right now.
I know that, and that's a thing. Like, I'm certain it's definitely not easy to that degree. Like,
right.
I guess the rudimentary chords, I guess, felt pretty simple. In the end, I was only playing about 3 or 4 chords for each piece of music, so I didn't get far enough to know the full extent of the instrument.
Right.
I love me some Miles Davis, though.
Okay.
More about that later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where do you go from trumpet?
So trumpet went well for about 2 years, maybe 3 at the most. And we did concerts at the end of the year where the full band got together and we played these compositions, none of which I recognized. They were all they were consistent across schools. I heard a lot of schools playing these compositions, but I don't remember them if you can find them anywhere online or anything. They may have just been curated for the school.
Right.
I'm not sure. I just remember one being called, I think it was called Fire Dance.
Okay.
Something like that. I remember the first note being a D. That's all I
There you go. Yeah.
remember.
So you did that for a couple of years.
And then eventually, I think I just told my parents that I wasn't feeling it anymore.
Okay.
And they've always been really supportive in how I feel. So in any situation where I was like, no, they just said, okay.
All right. So are you done with instruments at that point?
And so at that point, it's a long break.
Wow.
And I had attended band concerts after that, just in passing, because they were a thing, and my friends went to some of them.
Sure.
But let's see, it wasn't until freshman year of high school. So I guess I quit band in 7th grade.
Okay.
And in 9th grade, there is an intro to guitar class.
At your high school?
At my high school.
Get out of here.
Which was cool.
That is cool.
Guitar.
That cancels out the whole check sheet for the trumpet practice.
Sort of.
I mean,
because it was definitely more enjoyable, but the instruction was the exact same.
Oh, okay.
Unfortunately, and so maybe even harsher.
Oh, bummer.
And so the only thing that made it truly worth it was an instrument I felt a little bit more connected to.
Okay.
And a lot of my friends were in the class.
Nice.
And my first bandmate, Brandon, was in there.
Okay.
And it was an easy A for him because he was already really good.
Oh, nice.
And so he's in there, trying to get his credits all together to graduate. And he's just like, this is an easy one to just top onto my fine arts. No problem, because he knew all the chords.
Cool.
He even knew how to play most of the solos, out there. And he was just trying not to accidentally flex too hard in the class, though.
And be like, hey, you're supposed to be in the other, advanced or whatever you call it.
We're going to bump you up.
Yeah. So you're not listening to music in middle school. Concerts happen, but they're not, something that particularly resonates with you. Was there an album that you first fell in love with whenever listening to music did begin, or maybe one that you acquired that sort of gave birth to your own collection?
Yeah, so here was probably also in freshman year,
Okay.
shortly after that guitar class. Same friend, Brandon,
Yeah.
had got me. Now, at the time, I was definitely listening to things in passing. At this point, I didn't have a preference for music. I just thought certain things were catchy.
Okay.
And so maybe I would save something to my YouTube playlist that would be kind of cool. I was into a lot of electronic sounds at the time.
Interesting.
Some I know dubstep was huge
Mm-hmm.
in 2012ish. It
Yeah.
was like getting big around then, so that was a thing that my dad also introduced me to. Out of with all the Rush and the grunge, he also liked Skrillex at the
Interesting.
time, and so he was like, check
Wow.
this out. And so I think that was the first thing that actually got added to my phone, where I was like, okay, I'm listening to this now, but still not like hardcore about it. It was just
Right.
like, yeah, it's cool.
Right.
Yeah.
So then, first memorable concert.
And so, first memorable concert.
I'm sorry
Or
if
piece
I,
of music.
well, but yeah, well, for the first album that you
Gotcha.
were really interested in, and then also your first show.
It's tricky because I'm trying to remember when I became an album person. Because that friend Brandon showed me a multitude of artists. He showed me Black Sabbath,
Okay,
Metallica,
nice.
Led Zeppelin,
There you go,
Beatles,
man.
and a little more Rush.
Okay,
And that's where I did. Oh yes, definitely some yes.
yeah.
And I think the first song where I was like, wow, like really focusing in on it was a very interesting one, kind of a deep cut. Maybe not so much. Electric Funeral by Black Sabbath.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Is that the wow 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 wow? Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh my God, that's a great cut.
That guitar tone was crazy to me.
Yeah.
And it was also, there was something just sort of hypnotic about that rhythm.
Yes.
It was very slow and brutal.
Yeah.
And so that was the first thing where I'm actively listening.
Okay.
I'm not just like, cool, it's a part of my day. Now I'm like listening to instruments, and I'm
Yeah,
like,
okay.
this is like something that's sounding cool. Album though,
Electric Funeral. That's a good. What about show? First concert that is memorable,
concert that was memorable. I saw Iron Maiden with my dad.
really fun.
It was Iron Maiden with Ghost opening.
Okay, I'm not familiar with Ghost.
And Ghost they're a newer metal group. It's controversial for me to use the word metal for them because I know a lot of people are like, they're not metal.
Okay.
That's what the journalists say. So
Yeah.
that's what all the articles will tell you.
I remember when there were like 5 genres, and
Yeah.
now there's like 367. I'm like, I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Now there's 300 genres to start, and then 300 more with post in front of them. Right? So
Precisely.
it's like,
Precisely.
There's rock, then
Yeah.
there's post rock.
Yeah.
There's grunge, there's post grunge, and etc.
Yeah.
We're gonna keep
Yeah.
going. And then
I would imagine that would be fun. Was it a good vibe at that show?
yeah,
Nice.
yeah. And I
Where'd
think
you see him?
it was T-Mobile Center,
Okay.
/ Sprint Center
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
time, and it was great. I remember my dad being a little bit critical towards it. He enjoyed it, but he was like, "Man, Ghost outplayed the hell out of them."
I mean,
Because
I am surprised that Iron Maiden has played that venue. I didn't know they toured that recently. I mean, that venue is only, what, 10, 12, 15 years old. It's not an old venue, so
Yeah.
it's surprised. Like, I didn't know they still toured. So, I mean, if you're old and older and not as crisp as you once were, and some young bloods come around, and I think you roll the dice
sure.
every time you take the stage of being outplayed by your opener.
Yeah, at the time, Ghost was brand new. Now they have multiple albums out, but Iron Maiden was still impressive given the fact that their vocalist has had multiple throat surgeries for throat cancer. And he has come out of those still hitting many of the high notes.
Oh wow!
and
Good for him.
it's pretty shocking sometimes. You're just like, yeah, he's been cut all up and down his throat just to get all the yucky stuff out of there,
Right.
and he still somehow just goes
Yeah.
for it, and it's great. And I think I was very entranced by their bassist,
Okay.
Steve Harris, who
And you're what age when the show happens? Ish.
shoot,
High school. After.
15, 16,
Okay.
maybe.
Cool.
And now this wasn't my first show, but the first show I was focused on.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course.
And so, but Steve Harris with his galloping technique on the bass, he's using 3 fingers.
Okay.
So instead of your normal pizzicato, 2 fingers, he's galloping with 3 fingers, something I'm not very great at. But and that's how he gets that really fast sound, but very little of that metallic clankiness because he's not using a pick. He's using his 3 fingers, but he's hitting it at the speed of a pick, which is impressive because usually,
Wow.
yeah, usually with anything over a certain speed, you're gonna want to pick to be able to strum that fast, right? But he's just like a horse. in his hand.
Nice.
It's crazy.
So
It's impressive. Yeah.
what was the name of your first band?
Dazed Haven,
Dazed Haven. And you're what age?
probably around the same, 15, 16.
Playing bass. Okay.
Now, yeah, and this is where like I have trouble figuring out when certain things started, but the band started pretty quick after I started the bass, like very little time, maybe 3 or 4 months.
Okay.
So, and now it's worth mentioning I started the bass in the first place because of my brother, Dane Bridges, who is
Double B.
who is the bassist in a KC band called Via Luna.
Okay.
They're sort of a math rock, like jazzy. Yeah, I know. There's another genre for
Yeah.
you. I would describe math rock as very technical. He originally described it to me as a jazz rock infusion.
Okay.
So it uses a lot of like jazz chords, a lot of jazz progressions, but it involves a lot of very technical time signature stuff. I think that's where math comes into play.
Okay.
It's very mathematical.
Let's see. Just 6 episodes ago, Shane Hatfield, who is known on the airwaves as Pretty Boy, does a show called The Scene, and it's like all local, regional, and it's been around for quite some time. But I went to, getting ready for his. I went to his web, and he's got like, I mean, 25 genres listed of what you might come across if you tune into his program, and which airs. You have to check the episode for the deets, but it airs Friday night on an FM station out of Kearney, and then it airs twice on Mondays on Counterclockwise KC internet radio. Anyway, I saw I'm like, look at all these genres, and then I was like, math, like somebody, did you pay a kid and they accident? I was like, that's a fucking school. So like, what do you?
It's pretty off-putting at first. You're like, I don't want to do math.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that just comes from the complexity of it and how it involves a lot of tricky chords and a lot of tricky drum patterns. And
so Dazed Haven, and then have there been others in between? And there have been others between that.
I saw my brother.
That's right.
At a show he was playing.
Nice.
And that's where it clicked. This was like in my huge gap of playing instruments. I had played the guitar a little bit, and after that guitar class, I was intimidated by it. I knew a few chords, but I was having trouble with the many strings.
But you knew before that show that your brother was playing and whatever. But it took going to see him for it to click.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I saw him playing the bass up there, and
tell me again. He plays in a band right now, and it's called
Via Luna.
Via Luna.
They actually
Okay.
just got done with a tour on their new album.
By Way of the Moon, right? This loose.
That would be awesome.
But it's a loose translation of.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Absolutely. No, that's amazing that you got that. Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Because they don't even know truly what it's supposed to mean, but moon is involved for sure.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. But I saw him playing, and I was like, oh right, there's a different type of guitar, isn't there? And I was like, and I saw like his 4-string, his bass. And I was just like, let's give it another try. And so I went to Guitar Center like a week later.
Oh, wow.
And
Cash in hand, ready to
I
buy.
think I went there with my brother
Okay, nice.
as an advisor. It's
Okay,
like,
yeah.
what should I get?
Yeah.
And I got this Ibanez bass and an amp, and went home that day and did not stop playing from there.
And ever since you've been the bass playing Bridges brothers, a lot of B's, right?
Yes.
Nice.
And for a time when we both had long hair, it was easy to get us confused at music venues where we were both attending.
Oh, yeah.
The only difference is that he's much taller than me.
Okay,
So you
okay.
can tell that way. But now his hair is very short, so it's
Okay.
easy to.
So you got Dazed Haven, you got seeing your brother gig,
Yeah.
and then what?
And so it was the seeing the brother. That's what got me into Dazed Haven. I think.
Okay.
So that happened prior, and it was with my friend Brandon at school. He was on guitar. He had a friend named Jesse on guitar and vocals, so 2 guitars, and no drummer at the time. But we were very much interested in getting together. We also had a friend, Marcus, who was a part of the group, who would come in to play later as a 3rd guitarist.
Oh, wow. That's pretty American right there.
Right. And so we were in the garage like any day we could after school. I would had my amp on this dolly, and I would just walk it over to their house.
Nice.
And the bass on my back, and we would get there and we would just
With
jam.
a soft shell case that you could wear.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. And then Jesse, the vocalist, had these songs that he was already writing, and they were very rudimentary 3 to 4 chord songs used. Most of them all used the same chords, just rearranged in certain ways.
Sounds like Elvis Costello or something.
And so I would say it was very. Jesse comes from Mississippi.
Okay.
He's got this very heavy accent.
Okay.
It ended up translating into Southern rock pretty much.
Nice.
And it ended up, which at the time, I didn't care what I played. I just wanted to play something. And so I didn't know if I was into it or not into it. I was just happy to play the part. Later on, I would discover that it's not really about the music you like. Playing music in general is always fun. That's also what I've discovered is I can totally be in a band that plays music that I don't particularly listen to. In fact, that's usually the case with a lot of bands. My brother's a great example. He plays in that math rock band that's it's not extremely cheery, but the sound is very uplifting, very vibrant, and very in your face at times.
Cool.
But he, as a listener, isn't really into math rock. He is more of like a metal, like black metal listener. Like he likes a band called Deaf Heaven. I don't know if you've heard of them, but
I've not heard of black metal, let alone anybody that falls under that umbrella.
It's just really, harsh noise.
Okay, yeah,
with guitars,
sure, yeah.
Like blast beats on the drums.
Oh,
and
man.
it's very heavy, very loud. But that's an example, and but once I'm in Dazed Haven at this point, on the side I'm listening to Pink Floyd is something I forgot to mention.
Okay.
Pink Floyd was another one that I was introduced to by them. We in fact covered many Pink Floyd songs.
Really?
Couldn't tell if it was correctly or not.
Okay.
It may have sounded poor. I have no idea.
Right.
I probably still have some old recordings of what we were doing.
Did you guys ever cover anything off of Animals?
I think we tried to do Pigs at one point.
Okay. That's to me Waters at his best. If you're listening to
I need to come back.
And Gilmore shreds on a couple of those solo. Yeah. I mean, on the whole thing really, but
yeah, that's a band especially that I could see myself coming back around to today. But I had played and heard so much of their stuff at that time, I had actually burnt myself out accidentally.
That's fair.
I had played Comfortably Numb and unbelievable.
Great bass line.
Amazing. But by the end of that, through playing it so many times, I'm just like, if I hear that guitar solo one more time.
Yeah.
It's an awesome solo.
Let's see. Metal, Umaguma, and maybe more. The Motion Picture Sound. Those are 3. If you're not familiar, kind of before they really exploded. that
Yeah.
are Adam Hart Mother is another, the
Cool.
cow wearing galoshes on the cover.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Those are, I mean, I love pretty much everything they did post Sid Barrett, all the way up to even Division Bell. But nevertheless, so Dazed Haven on the side, you're listening to stuff that isn't necessarily okay, and then where from there, band wise?
So we got maybe about between 8 to 10 songs arranged. Oh, and along the way we had 2 drummers.
Okay,
We had a guy named Joel on drums for a little while, and he was great, but he also did school band, and he ran into some scheduling issues,
okay,
so he just couldn't make it
yeah,
out. And that's where I met Dylan, the piano tuning guy,
okay,
who I knew from school for a very long time. He had been my neighbor since. I mean, we had been neighbors since we were born, and so we grew up together, weren't really like actual friends until
right,
the band came together and we officially met each other and spent time with each other. And he was a wonderful drummer, wonderful piano player. I'm shocked we didn't manage to integrate his piano skills into the band at some point, like bring it down, do a softer song with some piano stuff. We didn't do that, but we had a good few songs arranged. We felt good about them, and Jesse had some family friends who were in the production business,
okay,
who had a studio, and they were willing to listen to us and figure out if it would be something we could get recorded,
yeah,
even just partially, a little
yeah,
bit of it. And we got to about that point. This is probably about a year, at most 2 years of practicing, writing and practicing and putting these songs
weekly,
together. Weekly, yeah.
wow,
And
dedication.
yeah, it was
And
after.
you're still in high school,
I got out of high school in 2019.
so but when is this?
And at this time, oh yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
sorry. It's but yeah. So at this time, yeah, it's still about maybe sophomore year.
okay.
And
And again, you're getting support from mom and dad to go
absolutely,
do it.
yeah,
Nice.
that especially like major support from them because they they didn't do music stuff themselves, so they were fascinated to watch me put it together. Same with Blaine; it was very similar with him
Cool.
too. And so then at some point we played all the songs for the 2 guys who had the studio, and I don't know what the approach was going to be. We just wanted to know what they thought, and they were very, very positive about it. But looking back, I think it may have been somewhat of a red flag that they didn't give us any critiques at all. No constructive criticism. Keeping in mind we were all beginners at this. And looking back, I'm sure there were some major flaws in our dynamic and our,
Okay.
I think they may have been a little too nice.
But did they wind up recording it for you guys, or?
They wound up saying, we'll talk about it more.
Okay.
I don't think they ever said yes officially, but it was feeling good, and they were very enthusiastic about it. And I think, and I'm not saying they didn't want to. I just think, I think maybe as an effort to prevent hurting our feelings, I think they held back. In terms of hearing us, just because I have listened back to some of that stuff,
Yeah.
And what we had made, and it's hard to listen to now for me.
Because you've evolved and.
I've evolved and they have evolved,
Yeah.
and I'm not in a band with any of them now, but I know they're all way better players now.
Okay.
And so it was.
Everybody's still playing
Everybody's
from
still
that
playing.
band.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
It's a good sign.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, but yeah, eventually it came down to it, and we were like, right around the time where we were looking for dates to maybe test out their studio, our vocalist decided that he just didn't want to follow through. And he wanted to back out for personal reasons.
Sure.
And at the time I was a little bit mad, but it's not a big deal.
Right.
At this point, I mean, I've realized that allowed me to leave that project in grow with other ones.
Yeah.
I feel, and
We got to have those in all of our
yeah,
alleys,
absolutely.
you know, like,
It's one of those things like I was very glad it happened
yeah.
to get me kickstarted.
Right.
But there was also always going to be that time where I had to leave. And so,
Yeah. 2 years, man. That's a good run for
yeah, it
young.
wasn't bad.
I'm assuming everybody else is roughly your age, or
Yep, yep. We're probably all about the same age right now. There was no gigging though, no shows. It was all just straight practice, and that was, I think, what helps
probably what
strengthen the
you
material.
might have needed
for
it.
sure,
Yeah.
absolutely. I was also dabbling in pedals. I had this board put
Oh,
together
boy.
at the time, like
Nerd alert.
loaner pedals from Blaine and
Cool.
stuff, and I didn't know how to use any of them. I would just stomp them on and see what happened, and didn't even tweak the knobs at all. It was just loud and
Yeah.
stupid
Yeah.
sometimes, but it was awesome.
I bet.
To just do that in an unfiltered garage where the parents did not care at all what happened. It was awesome to just unleash.
Yeah.
And just feel that. And so yeah, vocalist decided that he didn't want to move forward. He wanted to pursue just singer-songwriting by himself. I think he felt a bit overwhelmed by the dynamic of things.
Okay.
And he was, which is understandable. Now that I look at what it takes to have a healthy band, it is a lot. And oftentimes even comparable to a relationship.
Oh, for sure. I mean, healthy is.
Yeah, heck, I've heard some people say a marriage. Like sometimes it's even to that degree, especially.
Which is why it hurts if it ends.
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
Like Patrick Swayze's character Bodhi from Point Break. If you've ever seen it, we shared time. She was my woman. But so that kind of dissolves, and then what's the next piece for you?
So it splits into a 3-piece now, an instrumental 3-piece, and throughout that project. I mentioned a friend named Marcus. He, as a third guitarist, he ended up coming in about like a year into that Dazed Haven process. And Brandon, the guitarist that got me into it in the first place, ended up leaving.
Oh.
And actually, I think it was Jesse's decision to remove him from the group, if I remember right. And at the time, it was mainly just a reliability thing.
Okay. Gotta have that.
He wasn't showing up, and he wasn't learning more parts. He was kind of just at a standstill.
Sure.
I say this just like honestly, I'm still really good friends with him.
Cool.
Now. Like that, we reconnected after he had left the group. And,
nice.
We're still buds at this point, so it's not like me.
Sometimes
I don't mean to jab.
No. Sometimes it's like you make choices and decisions, and it's not really clear why until you've had some time to let it marinate.
Sure, yeah.
And then
absolutely.
you're like, oh man, I was going through some shit, or I felt it at one point, and then I no longer felt. I mean, it could be a bunch of different, but it always is after some time to sort of look at it, less biased, or more objectively.
That's crazy important, because like at the time, I feel like we were all a little bit pissed when it started dissolving, just because we had worked on the material so much. But looking back, it just like it is the right. Whatever it was the right thing.
Okay.
And so, but yeah, as a 3-piece, we renamed ourselves to Concept.
That was Concept?
Just Concept.
Concept. Oh,
Concept.
Okay.
And we had put some ideas together for a little bit. It just wasn't gelling. And this was just Marcus, Dylan, and me.
Okay. Trying to make it work.
Trying to make something work, but without the songwriting glue that was Jesse, we didn't know how to put anything together.
Sure.
So it glided away from there, and we all went our separate ways.
Yeah.
And that was okay. Around this time, I was now bandless and back to practicing at home. Back to learning other people's material.
Makes it sound like you were naked. You say bandless.
Yeah, it did. It did feel like a loss of purpose for a little bit there.
I bet.
And I was like, well, what do with the instrument now? It's like, I have no idea what to do with this. And then, and my mic distance is okay here. Right?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay.
You're good.
Just making sure. But too late to ask, I guess.
Well, it's a thing. I mean, you would think that I would know But I mean, I'm still
That's okay.
like, I've had some episodes where the audio sucks, and more often than not, like I'm my volume is higher than the get because I'm used to it.
Sure,
I
sure, sure.
sit here and I'm sort of, you know, trying to direct the conversation. I'm just aware of it. So it's, never perfect. Like
That's okay.
some
I
episodes have
don't
been
mind at all.
absolute disasters, and some have been fun. I mean, they've all been fun.
Cool.
But anyway, so you're bandless.
Yeah. So, and then this is around the time where it was probably my dad that mentioned, maybe he knew that I was looking for something, and he was like, "Hey, there's this thing called School of Rock. There's one in Lee Summit. That particular location started around 2015. It was about late 2016 at this time, I
Okay.
think. And
Named intentionally for the movie.
company came before the movie. Shockingly,
Really?
it started in Philadelphia, and it was a startup originally called man, I forget. It wasn't called School of Rock at first. That wasn't even a thing. It was, I think, just Rock School or School of Rock and Music or something like that.
Cool.
But it was started up by this one guy, and it was a small place in Philadelphia where people did lessons and they did rehearsals and stuff. And then it was bought and given the official license of School of Rock.
Okay.
And is now an international corporation.
Oh wow. Okay.
And
You could get benefits if you work there, perhaps.
at this very moment, I don't. But once I would get on salary, yes.
Right. Right.
Which
I
would love to.
So you're bandless, and your dad feels it, and maybe gives you a little hat tip to say,
Yeah.
"I don't know if this is what you need, but go check it out."
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
He was like, I don't know if you're into like institutionalizing it, but
Sounds
here's a tip. And so I looked it up. Looked cool. And the main thing that caught my eye was the whole motto of it is teaching through performance-based education.
okay.
So it's not just lessons, it's lessons, rehearsals, and gigs.
Oh,
All
cool.
in one package. And so I was like, yeah, I mean, why not? And I filled out an application myself, not knowing that the parent's supposed to do that.
Oh.
And so I filled the application out anyway, and they called me asking for my dad, essentially. And I was just like, no, this is him. And they're just like, oh, well, they didn't mind at all. And they're just like, well, you want to come in and do a trial lesson? I mean, we do free lessons for people who just want to demo the
Staging
instructors.
in the restaurant business.
See, yeah.
Somebody comes in and you watch them work a shift and see if they're going to be worth a shit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, essentially.
Right, yeah. And so at the time I was coming in as a potential student, not a potential worker.
Okay.
And so I came in and I did a trial lesson with who would then become my bass teacher for almost 2 years.
Okay.
Ben Harris,
Nice.
who is no longer working for School of Rock, but he is still a working musician. He is a jazz bassist, mainly professionalizing in the upright bass and playing in orchestras. And
Oh, wow.
and jazz bands and stuff. He went to Berkeley.
Oh, wow.
And then went to Manhattan School of Music. I'm not sure which one he got certified from, maybe both. But he, I don't know what put him in Missouri. Well, he said he came to Missouri because apparently Kansas has a pretty sprawling jazz scene. I didn't know that.
I did not either.
But he came here for the Kansas City jazz scene.
Oh,
So,
yes. Historically. I mean, that's the birthplace.
Sorry, did I say Kansas?
Yeah.
Kansas City jazz scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. I get that confused.
That's-
I'm from here. But yeah, he came here for that, and I guess it really worked out for him. He finds work really easily around here.
Cool.
But he was, in the best of ways, this is a compliment to him, wildly overqualified for School of Rock.
Okay.
He could easily be a professor at the biggest university you can think of, and he would rock it. But he chose to settle down in a smaller place. He didn't want the attention. He doesn't. He seems to me more of a I don't want to use the word hermit. It's harsh, but like he's introvert for
Introvert.
sure.
Yeah.
He's not one to lecture necessarily.
Cool.
He's more like he wants to visit people on their own and
Yeah.
see them face to face
Yeah.
in an isolated series of lessons.
I appreciate that very much.
And I feel like that really helps tailor someone's playing
Yeah.
when it's one on
Yeah.
one.
So you're going in as a prospective student.
Yep. So, and it's just a 30-minute lesson. And I had my Ibanez bass. He had this beat up, possibly 1960s fretless precision bass. It was this beautiful thing, and that got me hooked right away. I'm just like, what do I have to do to get one of those?
Let's sign right here. Like, get one tomorrow.
Yeah. But it went amazing. I don't particularly remember that lesson. I just remember it was enough for me to be like, yep. Like that, I need instruction. That
Yeah,
I immediately connected that I had done so much with myself, by myself at home.
Plateaued.
And it was getting to a point where I'm like, I'm not learning anymore.
Yeah.
Like I need like,
always got to be learning.
yeah. And so I was not opposed at all to adding structure to my learning. That was what I needed.
Okay.
And so, yeah, and that worked out. And so, I talked my family into signing me up. It's an expensive program.
Oh, okay.
And my dad was all for it just because he knew, he was like, it seems like it means something to you. I'm like, it does. And he's like, I'm going to hold you to that. And so he signed me up for it, and it was a hit. I mean, and I've never left since then. And that was beginning of 2017 when I officially signed up.
Okay. So where from that time, Major Matt Mason, where does that happen?
2020.
Okay. So you're bandless for 3 years and doing the School of Rock thing and taking instruction
And well, before Major Matt, man, there's so many steps I'm forgetting here.
It's okay.
Well, before Major Matt, I was in a band comprised of School of Rock students.
Oh, fun.
Called Formalities.
Okay.
And we played about 6, maybe 7 shows in the KC area. And that was like the first most like rewarding, awesomest project I'd ever
2
been with.
years practicing and putting a lot of energy into getting material down and almost recorded, but no gigging. And so now you're scratching that itch you couldn't reach. And were you nervous? I mean,
sure.
Initially?
But what helped us is that we had all come from School of Rock and already had maybe about over a dozen gigs under our belts.
Okay.
From School of Rock.
That's so cool.
Because with the School of Rock, it's a 4-month period, like each
trimester.
Each trimester is about 4 months. They do what are called like shows. The show is not, they refer to them as shows, but it's more like a particular band that you are in, and that band has a theme, and so you play a particular type of music or a particular band. And so my first trimester with School of Rock was playing all Ramones.
Oh, wow.
Songs. And so it was actually
fun.
It was actually a really good jumping off point for me because Ramones songs were pretty easy on the bass.
Yeah.
I don't like using the word easy because music is not easy.
Simple.
But simple on the instrument and like 3 chords.
Yeah.
Three notes that I had to keep track of. Often repeating. A lot of their songs use the same group of notes. And so
I just did an episode with somebody who had Rocket to Russia on their list, and that was the first time. I've heard the Ramones a bunch, but I've never listened to the Ramones. And I sat down, I was like, I fucking like these guys a lot.
It's and I got into the rabbit hole there.
Okay.
Listened to a lot of Ramones. So then we played a show after 4 months of rehearsing and also meeting my first new friends at the school. Particularly Jace was a notable one. Him and I would go on to form Formalities later. But at the end of the 4 months, we played a show at 2 shows. One was at Aftershock, which is no longer around.
Okay.
That was in North Kansas.
You got to
City,
quit gigging at these venues that die after you gig there.
Everything I touch is gone. And so after yeah, I was so sad when the pandemic came around.
Oh, dang.
It was watching almost all of the venues I had played at as a student
Just
being
get,
wiped.
yeah, wow.
And it was nowadays School of Rock has recovered and found new ones, but it was tough to see a lot of the places that were my learning points of gigging no longer being around.
Yeah.
And so played at Aftershock, and then we played at a restaurant in Lee Summit called Tiff and Jay's.
Okay.
They have a basement with a stage,
Yeah.
and just a place where you can set up
Yeah.
and do your thing.
They move some bodies through there, that
Yes,
place.
and that was usually the packed house.
Okay.
That was very awesome. And but yeah, so that went well, and I went on to do about 10 more trimesters with the school.
Dang.
And that was, I aged out at 18
Okay.
after about 8 of those, and then joined the adult band and did about 2 more.
Huh.
Oh, 7, and then did 3 more as adult band. So
Okay.
trying to do the math. And the adult band was just a mixture of instructors and also just adult students. That because we teach all ages,
Right.
and adult students are harder to come by, but they do come through. Sometimes it's them picking the instrument back up. Sometimes it's totally new to them.
Wow.
And the adult
This
band
place sounds really cool.
It's amazing. It speaks that I'm still there.
Right.
It really stuck, and it's a community that has barely changed since then too. There were, of course, some company changes, but all of the staff, besides Ben and Taylor, are 2 instructors to note who have since departed. The rest are still there, and so since I started. And so all of my mentors are still there. I'm now working alongside them, which
God,
feels crazy.
that's awesome.
But they all treat me just like one of them.
A peer,
which
nice.
It means a lot, because my biggest fear getting into it so early was some age discrimination, and it's weird that I've thought this, but am I moving too fast? Am I too young to be doing all this, and I kept fearing that there was going to be that one person that was just like, you need to go back to the drawing board and figure yourself out, never happened.
Cool.
So I guess that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And so yeah, been teaching there, but yeah, formalities had formed before I was teaching there, and that's where I started gigging up aside from School of Rock. Because it was really easy to gig with School of Rock because they organized it all.
That's been my burning question. Is you say this is what they do, and the thing that I'm like, they contact venues and book stuff for you, crazy.
And we played the Record Bar a lot.
Oh, fun.
Which ended up creating my relationship with that venue. Now I play there as much as I can. It's hard because they get a lot of bands going through there. But
yeah, I've been Steve Tulipana. I've been messaging back and forth, and I just got his list.
Cool.
And so now the
it's
ball
gonna be
is
so fun
in
to see
his
his
court
episode.
to pick a date, and
Awesome.
then
Yeah, I love Steve. So after it was, formalities had formed during our School of Rock tenure, and that just went really well. We got with a drummer named Taylor, and we got with another guitarist named Luke, and we had this wonderful practice space in Luke's basement. It was a totally soundproofed basement studio. It was isolated, it was quiet, and no reverb whatsoever.
Oh my God, I love it.
You snapped and you heard nothing, and it was awesome because I had never experienced that. So we didn't even record a lot of stuff, which I regret now. I'm like, we could have utilized that space so well, but we played so much in there, and we put together this set of 7 to 8 songs that was extremely experimental, very noisy, and it was the strangest music I've ever made. And it was it's probably it's really a really high comparison to make, but Radiohead. It was just a lot of Radiohead textures going on, because that was Luke's favorite band at the time, and he was one of our songwriting powerhouses. And
Radiohead textures should be like a kind of carpet or a paint sample.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know what it is, but I also know very much what it is.
Exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. And that's what ended up getting put in a review, one of our shows.
Formalities?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you know Too Much Rock.
Uh-uh.
It's a website. It's also the guy named Sid who runs it. It's like a music
Oh,
journalist
cool.
site, a music blog essentially.
Nice.
But he goes and sees bands and he takes pictures and he does reviews of their sets and stuff. Nothing too critical. He just says like, this is what stuck out to me. This band is from blah blah blah,
Yeah.
and they're doing this. And he came to one of our shows, and that was where I met Major Matt. We opened for Major Matt Mason.
Oh, cool.
When he was a duo with Brian Hurtgen, who is with Major Matt still.
Okay.
Now I'm with him, but it was them two, and they had invited us out to play with them because I had met Matt in passing prior at another show. So many steps to it, but that was. And Luke was a big fan. Luke, our guitarist, was a huge fan of Matt. I didn't know anything about Matt.
Right.
But Luke saw him in the audience at one of our shows, and he was like, "Holy shit, that's Matthew Roth." And I was just like, "Who?"
The
And he was just like, he's like one of the most prolific folk artists of the New York scene. And I was just like, really? And he's this saying all these things, and I'm just like, well, cool. And and he came up to us and he really liked our set. He was like, that was awesome, guys. It reminded me of a lot of like my favorite experimental things and stuff like that. And so we just went our ways, and later on he was like, hey, we're playing a show at Records with Merit.
Oh, where?
And that's in Westport.
No, I know, but just like in the store?
Yeah, right next to the door there where the window is, they would move the shelves over. That's where it is, and they would essentially keep the door open so there's more space and everything. Yeah, they don't put shows on over there anymore, really, but they've told us that they would make an exception for Major Matt potentially. I don't know if we're doing anything.
But you
soon,
can factually state that you have gigged at Records with Merit.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yes, and so is my brother. That's where that was, I believe, actually the show where I had the revelation about bass. Was my brother at Records with Merit.
Okay.
Playing there, and I was like, yeah, that's very cool. But yeah, and so Formalities played that show, and that's where Sid from Too Much Rock reviewed our set, and he used the term Radiohead textures.
Oh, funny.
In his review.
Yeah.
He was like,
it's a very music journalist thing of him to do.
Yeah, he was like they're just kids, they're getting started.
Sure.
He's like, they're working with a lot of sounds, some Radioheady kind of stuff.
Gotcha.
And that was what he had to say.
Yeah.
And it was true. But yeah, and then eventually Formalities just naturally drifted apart through getting really busy.
Right.
Our guitarist Luke wanted to go to college in a different state, so he moved to Boulder, Colorado
to go to see you.
Yep.
That's not cheap.
Not at all. And he's going there to get a mathematics degree of sorts. He wants to do engineering like his father.
Well,
so that's the place to go for.
He'll probably do well for himself.
I'm absolutely certain he's one of the smartest people I've ever met. And then our drummer Taylor went to school for sound engineering and is now certified in doing sound at venues all over the city.
Really?
Yeah.
Cool.
So, and then Jace, the guy who got me sort of into the group and acquainted with everyone, joined a couple other projects after that, and I think now he's just working. He's still doing music as a hobby, but he has yet to put together a band. I've let him know that when the time comes, I would love to collaborate with him again, but right now there's a lot going on.
Good for you to put that out there.
Yeah,
I mean,
I would love to get that whole group back together, but at the moment it's just not right.
Right. Yeah.
But I am holding hope that someday, you never know. We're seeing a lot of bands these past few years especially who are reuniting after 20-year gaps.
Locally.
Locally and all over the country. And actually one of the bands I have on my list has done so. But yeah, and so fast forwarding a little bit, Formalities naturally drifted. Nothing bad happened. It was just like, yep, time to go, move on. And Major Matt Mason and Matt reached out to me. He's like, you want to come over and talk? It wasn't even like a music proposition. He's just like, you want to hang out? I was like, yeah. Sure. And so we got together. I went to his house. It was in Shawnee, so that's like the 40-ish minute
Yeah,
drive that I
yeah.
make. And we just talked. We talked music, like the music that we liked, like what we're about to do. You know,
Right.
we just talked about records,
Cool.
and we just hit it off and got along really well.
Awesome.
And we both had like really deep talks and stuff. And um, he had me listen to some of the stuff he was working on, and he was just like, "Yeah, take some of this home, and I'll send it to you." And he's like, "Put some bass to it if you feel inclined, and I'll let you know what I think." And that started.
Nice.
And so since then, it has been. I say Formalities was the most rewarding project in terms of like songwriting from the ground up and learning about how to actually craft something and actually like create sounds with our pedals without just turning things on.
Yeah.
That was the most rewarding aspect of that group. With Major Matt, Matt has been a huge mentor in teaching me all about restraint and minimalism and being
It's the notes you don't play.
yes. With Formalities, it was everything all at once.
Sure.
Just
Man, you're getting like some serious foundation stones with the 2 years of the one project, and then a different flavor of instruction and gigging, and I mean,
yeah.
it's like I mean, it feels like a really inclusive, healthy sort of build to
Absolutely. Yeah.
to right now.
Oh, sure.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
You mentioned your list. I want to jump over to it.
Okay. Yeah.
Unless I'm cutting off a part of
I don't think so.
what you're getting out of Major Matt and
really
so forth.
Yeah, the only thing there was Major Matt. Like it was, I went in there with the when I actually got into the practice room with him, and it was with Brian on the drums, and everyone was together there. He had me starting on two songs, one called Victims of the Storm, which is out now. It's on Spotify and Bandcamp, I think YouTube as well, and then also a song called Endless Summers, which is not fully out right now, but there's a demo on Bandcamp. But we started with those two, and I went in playing very busy. And I played through both of those songs, and there was a lot of chords, a lot of fills, a lot of like jumping around, and
hence the restraint.
yeah. And
Okay.
Matt was like, I think I remember him being like, he was like, "That's cool." And
You're like, fuck, that's not
and
what
I
I
was like,
wanted to
"Oh
hear.
no!" And I got really nervous for a little bit there, but he in no way ever wants it to be like, he only wants to create the best feeling music,
Cool.
And so it was at the moment it was scary to me, and he
Yeah.
was just like, "Let's just pull it back a bit. Let's play less." And at first I took it as a jab, but I quickly had to rewire myself,
Right.
because I was like, that's not how this is. Like I know Matt's been doing this a long time.
Right.
And I know he wouldn't.
Good insight on
really-
your part.
Yeah, and so I was just like, let's just hear him out.
Okay.
And so he was like, let's try something like this. He showed me sort of a rhythmic idea, and I was like, okay. And so he sort of helped kickstart my playing with him by showing me some of his ideas, until eventually I could turn those into my own ideas. Like I just needed his blueprint first,
Right.
what he was going for, and that really helped. And so
For some reason, all of this is putting. Are you familiar with Jane's Addiction?
yeah,
3 days. Do you know that tune? I think it's on Nothing
I
Shocking.
need to hear it, but
But it's like, and it's a very long kind of, intense build of a song, and eventually, but the bass line is an interesting mix of, I think, appropriately busy and demonstrating restraint, and it sort of just sets the pattern for the whole song. But
Yeah.
I'll send it to you and check it out.
oh yeah, appropriately busy is an even better term. Like that's something that we went over a lot is like we started so simple. He would even do it to the drums too, because the drums are still kind of in flux, you know. Brian was still somewhat new to the project, not as new as me, but it was a learning experience for both of us,
Right.
learning to bring it way down to the bare bones.
Right.
Like we're talking whole notes with just the chords, no like messing around with picking, no like really rudimentary. And at first you're like, oh man, that's sluggish and boring. Like that's what would come to mind as a musician when you're playing through that. But then you feel the build, playing it that way, like ultra simplified, multiple times for multiple practices. And then finally starting to add a little bit, you realize how familiar you are with the feel of the song, until it's now just second nature.
Right.
Like you now have such a strong foundation that adding on to that is absolutely no hassle at all, and it doesn't throw anything off.
Right.
And so the whole goal was to build that foundation.
I don't usually do this.
That's okay.
We do. Like you love to, but never will again. Miss you, my dear Jayle. I prepared the room to Christmas.
Yeah,
Yes.
It's a monster song.
I love that, and that transition from the busyness, the ba-da-da-da, into just the driving notes, where it flattens out a little bit. That's extremely important, and that's a kind of thing that I learned about. But anyways,
Cool.
that was the message with Major Matt, and that, you know, eventually we've played many shows at this point and have recorded material and done a lot of stuff, and eventually I met Jason.
Yeah,
at
and
one
and
show.
I feel like I could be wrong here, but I feel like Jason said Chowk kind of came together February-ish, and again, I think I'm remembering correctly, spoke optimistically about like putting out an LP this year, or something to that effect. Regardless, it all felt like, wait, what? You guys, this, and I mean, I know that the gigs are happening, so
Yes.
it's like, it's sort of like, you know, if your path and all the things that you experienced up until now all sort of happened for a reason to craft the musician that you are. Like maybe the same stuff was happening for the two of them, and so you guys have been like fed and rested and sculpted, and now just here we go, boom.
Very well said.
Okay,
Yes.
that's gotta feel cool.
Yeah, absolutely, and that
Sounds cool.
That's why I'm just like beyond grateful for every single experience,
Sure.
good and bad.
Right, right.
'cause it's just like I couldn't have done any of it without. If I lost any of it along the way, it could have thrown everything off. You know.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
and but so Chowk. I don't know what I can speak to about LP.
That's
coming
okay.
in.
I wasn't
would
looking for a date or
Oh, you're okay.
a quote.
I
but-
would love to. It just depends how time works out.
Right,
So,
right.
Yeah.
You got to
but-
take it as it comes.
But we're working. We're
So your list, thank you very much
Yeah,
for sending
absolutely.
it. It's always fascinating to me. Some are intimidated, some are very eager. Sometimes I think folks overthink it. You know, in fact, Steve sent me his and said, if you ask me next week, my list is probably 5 different records, which is totally fair. Like, good.
Yeah.
Anyway, yours is one of those that, like, first glance, it's like, I don't know which is the artist and which is the album title in
Yes.
several.
I did artist first. and then
Regardless,
list.
it happens, you know.
Uh-huh.
It's just there's just stuff like if Pink Floyd "Wish You Were Here" was on your list, it would stand out because I've
Sure,
I've seen that
the name, yeah.
Well, I've seen that sequence of words together as an outfit and you know. So anyway, I was like, huh, this is going to be. I think this is going to be interesting. And so I usually try to run. I don't know if you gave it to me in chronological release order, but I like to run through them that way.
I noticed that. I did not list it that way, but I'm totally fine. with
So
running through
it
that way.
starts with 1996. This, one thing. Well, as I'm going through your list, I'm like, It's very interesting to see if people, sort of have a big span of years, or sometimes people have pockets, and sometimes it's all over the place. But with yours, I kept thinking, man, all this shit is like really recent. And it's because you're 22 years old, I think. But nevertheless, Failure, Fantastic Planet, 1996, third record of 6 for them. 17 tracks, 67 minutes. I was like, what is this going to be? And it opens with Saturday Savior, which is just I'm a sucker for a good opening. I love the thought process. What part of what this is a love for albums, which where that's headed currently today, I don't know. I hope it never dies, and we don't get to a spot where everybody's just dropping singles and an EP is a. But
I really hope. Yeah, I agree.
so I love albums. I love the idea of the songwriting process having happened and practice having happened, and then there's this unit that comes
Body
together
of
to
work,
make
yeah.
the thing that people can. I love that. I love track sequence. I'm always interested in track length, track title. I mean, I can geek out about most any of it.
Same.
So that I think all of that kind of makes me a sucker for a good opener. And Saturday Savior is crisp and clean, and there's like some kind of Nirvana-y distortion
There's a lot of that on
happening
this record.
in there. And then track 3, sequel, very cool. And cover art is similar to L. Ron Hubbard's book, who is the inventor of the Church of Scientology.
Oh,
So very cool sound.
yeah.
Not something that like I've necessarily heard before, but it also was like, if you had to start a job like immediately and you had zero preparation and somebody just handed you a uniform and it fit and felt like, oh, I can hang out with this. I had that. So how do these guys wind up in your wheelhouse?
Saturday Savior was my official introduction to.
Okay.
Very cool that's also going to be the first thing that you hear here.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure it was completely just stumbled across them on the internet.
Oh, really?
It was, yeah. I'm
Wow.
pretty sure Saturday Savior was on like my YouTube featured list, and clicked on it. That cover looked pretty intriguing, and I think I had heard the name tossed around. I couldn't quite remember. But
Okay.
I listened to that and I was like, wow. And that song made my playlist, and I did not hear the album for a long time.
Oh, wow. Funny how that works.
Because I think around the time I heard the song, I was just almost becoming an album person. Not quite, and I can't pinpoint when that was.
Right.
But
This album is
so
packed
cool. Yeah.
full of stuff. I mean,
Yeah, and I when I did get around to listening to it, I remember remembering some things and not remembering other things. Obviously, it's long, so it's going
Yeah.
to take a few
Yeah.
listens to get to a point. But the last, let's see, last 4 tracks, Another Space Song, Stuck on You, Heliotropic, Daylight, are the 4 like most beloved tracks from the fans of this group.
Oh, really?
And yeah, and we're also the 4 tracks that first just blew my freaking mind.
okay.
And when I've had the privilege to see every single one of these bands live.
Oh,
on
nice.
this list. I
Nice.
saw them most recently, Failure.
Okay.
They at the Granada in Lawrence.
Love that venue.
And insane set, but they always play those 4 tracks back to back at every show, and they always finish the show with those 4 because that's what the fans are waiting for. That's the magnum
But the
opus.
rest of the set list can be whatever.
Rest of the set list can be whatever.
Okay.
They put out an album last year.
Yeah.
And am I right? Or 2 years
I think so.
ago? And it
Might have
was
been 21.
and it was fantastic. And they played a majority of that album
Oh, good.
at the show,
Okay.
along with a lot of stuff from their whole catalog, really. But this was the band that I had sort of tipped earlier as a band breaking up and reuniting 20 years later.
Yes.
Because they stopped after Fantastic Planet.
Okay.
And due to a conflict within the band, they had parted ways. And they reunited reunited with a record in 2015, I believe.
Okay.
And that record was "The Heart Is a Monster," and it wasn't a smash hit, obviously, because you're not saying this name everywhere. But the fans that were waiting were ready for it, and when it came out, the whole Failure fan base they rose up and went crazy for it.
Cool.
And they came back to a packed house when they went back on tour.
Oh, wow.
And I've watched some interviews with them, and they're all very nice guys. And they actually have somewhat of a connection to the KC scene. I can explain that a little later.
Yeah.
They're very nice guys. But they had talked about how grateful they were to come back after all that time.
Yeah.
And have an audience of not just people who were around back when they started, but also a lot of young people who had just discovered them.
Cool.
And they were really thankful for like the generational coverage that they got.
Yeah.
Like while they were away, people were listening.
Yeah. And so
And it had an effect.
are you, I'm assuming you're familiar with their other five and a fan?
Absolutely.
Nice.
Yeah. Pretty much everything on this list, I'm like through the discography like completely. Like,
Okay. Well, it's very, very fascinating. We've sort of talked about your path and these foundational pieces, but you like in the, if your story is 9 chapters long, it's like chapter 6 and 7, I'm going, this is like the least musical musician I've ever met in my life. And then all of a sudden you just like turned it on and started. It sounds like consuming a lot and have sort of made, elevate, like you've caught up, to where you should be.
And that's exactly, actually verbatim what my cousin Scott told me. He's like a really, he was married into the family, but he's like a huge musical friend of mine because we're pretty much always exchanging music.
Nice.
And always talking, and him and my brother played music together a little bit too. But like I'm always talking music with him. We even have this little tiny Facebook page where we share stuff to each other. It gets like 3 views the page, but it's still fun to just talk about that stuff. And he had told me at one point, he was like, I have to admire your ability to have caught up and managed to like the things that me and this is from his perspective, the things that me and your brother are listening to, like all about it. And like you're just here and it's like you always were.
Wow.
And that was a really meaningful thing to me because like I feel that.
Yeah. I've used this analogy a bunch of times, but it's like plugging into the Matrix and uploading How to Fly a Helicopter. You're just like,
that's such an awesome way to put it.
I just consumed 46 bands' discographies in like 4.5 seconds.
Yeah.
And they're there. I'll tell you all about them.
And that's exactly why I couldn't tell you when that clicked. I just, at some point, it was just like, yes, music all the way.
Right, yeah.
That was the thing, and I don't know what year that happened.
Well,
I'm going to guess 20.
When we started and you're like, yeah, I'm going to concerts, but I'm not really paying attention, and songs and blah, blah, blah. I'm not really listening. I'm like, what? Are you meaning to say the words that are coming out? Because it doesn't sound like you're a dude in a band right now.
I know. It's happened really quick.
Nice.
But yeah, back to that.
Yeah.
That's it's the album has been with me ever since, and ever, like I say growing, not because I disliked it, but I continue to find new things to enjoy. Like I think I remember kind of discarding this middle section for a little while.
Yeah.
And I couldn't really plant anything. I was like, I don't really remember. But a lot of that Nirvana stuff you're talking about happens like right in the middle there. And at the time I wasn't totally into it, but now it's cool. It's really cool. Also, another thing I'll mention, so I don't create a rabbit hole later, is strangely, almost all of the albums that I have here, I don't consider the group's best work.
I'm glad you said that.
Most of these, I don't like, which is
Does that make them then the first you heard of that outfit? Is that what?
this was the first, yeah.
Right.
And it's an observation I'll like reconnect when we talk about
Yeah,
more of these.
yeah.
But that's an interesting thing that I've noted. Like it's not either I'll either not think it's their best work or it's not my favorite from them, but it is the one that made it happen.
Sure,
or the
sure.
one that
Yeah.
affected me musically.
I mean,
And,
you're not going to be, the best lover you could be with the person that you lose your virginity to. I mean,
Sure.
you gotta
Absolutely.
find your style and your
Yeah,
skill
yeah.
and get some repetition in there.
Yeah, so like although this was the introduction,
Yeah.
that's awesome. I later came to find I enjoyed some other things from them a little more.
Well, I mentioned that this album's packed, and you mentioned I was into this chunk here and avoided this, but I came back to it. It's one of my favorite things is to discover new favorite things about a body of work that you already knew.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh, I used to really look forward to tracks, 2, 6, 7, and 12, and right now 8, 9, and 10 are my favorites because I never gave them, or it just didn't click, whatever the case may be.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. One last thing on this one, and then I'll let you loose here.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. But the mention of the KC scene.
Yeah.
It's pretty loose, but it's worth mentioning that I found out about Shiner through Failure.
Oh.
Because Shiner often popped up as a comparative
Oh, funny.
band.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if Shiner and Failure have ever played together. I have no idea. But come to find later on, I became a fan of Shiner after figuring out, and actually Starless from Shiner almost made the list.
Oh, okay.
But I know you had an episode with their drummer.
Gherkin? Yeah.
Gherkin,
Yeah.
But anyways.
He early on, we worked together for many years.
Really?
And,
Very cool.
Yeah. And he goes, I think I was talking about, I don't know why, but I was talking about squirting. And he goes, is this a sex podcast? And I was like, no, it's I promise it's not. And he's like, good, because I didn't wear my sex podcast t-shirt.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. But yeah, so I saw Shiner being compared to Failure a lot. There were a lot of Failure fans that were throwing around the name Shiner. Like,
Okay.
It reminds me of Shiner. And I'm
Nice.
just like, okay, cool. And listen to them, come to find they're from Kansas City.
Yeah.
And then I connect with Paul Malinowski, the bassist of Shiner. He is recorded a lot of the Major Matt stuff that's coming out.
Seriously?
Yeah, so Major Matt Mason recorded our first few songs at Massive Sound in Shawnee,
Okay.
where Paul's studio
Yeah.
is. And so that's where I met Paul, and that's where and then Paul was recently had the opportunity to tour with Failure as their front of house sound guy.
Okay.
So he did the sound and the mixing for that.
Very cool.
And later on, I was invited by Paul to a watch party to watch. They recently did a live movie. Failure did.
Really?
For the tour that they just did, they did a live movie for it, and I went and saw it, and it was awesome.
Like a documentary of sorts?
They have a documentary coming about
Oh.
their story, but the live movie was more of like an hour of like live music from the tour,
okay,
but like
okay.
professionally filmed and
Cool.
recorded. But yeah, that's the loose connection there.
Okay.
That Paul from the KC scene
Yeah.
is working with Failure on tour.
Nice.
Which, I think is awesome, and
Yeah.
it's truly by just circumstance and chance
Right.
that I am just by a hair's linked to Failure through
Right,
Paul,
yeah.
just a tiny bit. Yeah.
Well, that one was from 96, and we jumped 6 years ahead to 2002. I was very curious about this guy. Turn on the bright lights, Interpol. So first, it's their debut, and they've got 7 total, including one from last year. This one's 11 tracks, 48 minutes. Another killer, that untitled opening track. I was like, this is, funny things happen when listening to music but I'm like, I bet this is gonna be like the star of the album, and then it blends like beautifully into track 2, and I was like, oh shit, This is also really
Yeah.
good. Which is Obstacle, and then again into NYC. I think this
Yep.
track 3. Lots to like about this record. I've never listened to them before this. The one thing that stood out before I hit play was I feel like there's a passionate fan base almost akin to Tool. You know, you hear like Tool fans are like, like bananas about Tool.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've heard a comparison for these guys and their fan base. I don't know if that's right or
That's an observation I have not heard, but can absolutely see it. They have a strong fan base, especially abroad.
Okay.
In the UK and especially South America. Oh my gosh, the Brazilians and Interpol, wild.
Really?
Yeah, they
Wow.
will. Interpol will play here at the Midland to a few, 1,000 or so people, and then go down to Brazil and play to 100,000 if they
Okay.
want to. And
Wow.
it's just like insane. When they go out of country, it is a big deal. When they're around here, it's cool, but it's not blowing off.
Well, there's something to be said about this sort of three-legged stool that is this record, and it's like tone and an emotional pull towards the music that I can't describe any better than that. And then the production like those three things working together. Like, I mean, I was borderline transfixed with this record, and you're not going to sit there and tell me that this is not their best work or not your favorite of theirs. Is that true?
I don't think it's their most cohesive.
Okay.
It's hard for me to figure out what is their best. It's a tie between this one and their sophomore record.
Okay, which
It's
is
called Antics.
okay.
And it's a contrast, like instead of the dark album cover, it's a bright white album cover. But it was them quickly capitalizing on this record. They're out of New York, and they produced this record in a closet, in just a basement in somewhere in New York, and that's another thing that connected with me is like the sheer quality that came out of this record. For if you go watch, there's plenty of documentaries about this record, and
really?
And they're just like they're shoulder to shoulder in this
Oh
room,
my God.
just like tapping away on their instruments, and it looks miserable.
It
And
sounds miserable.
And I think they were miserable. They've talked about that time of their life as not being very great, but sometimes that hardship brings out the best
Right.
music in you,
Right.
And so, and they grew in the New York scene, sort of at the very close to the helm of the indie / garage rock revival movement that was the Strokes were involved with that, the Jaye, all bands that they ended up playing with very often in New York,
Like sharing a bill with. Okay.
yes,
Okay.
and Interpol even recorded a good chunk of their recent material in the Jaye's recording space in New York until they were kicked out by police.
Why?
Little fact, they were too loud.
Oh God.
Because
Okay.
that recording space was in an apartment complex, which was quite poor placement for it. But,
yeah.
but
yeah.
maybe they can be kind of loud sometimes, so maybe that's. But I don't know. Yeah, it's mesmerizing.
Yes.
The right word for it, and I love how you mentioned a pull of sorts.
Yeah.
Because when my introduction was Obstacle,
Okay.
and another one that was just recommended to me online. I just clicked on it. And
Algorithms earning that pay.
Right, a lot of this is going to be algorithm based. It's like, but I
But you already said you had when we were talking about a first album. You're like the first thing that was on my phone, which was right after you told me about having YouTube in high school. So all
It
this
makes sense.
stuff
Yeah,
is
totally.
completely bananas to me.
but yeah, so I listened to Obstacle, and the chords on the guitar immediately I was like, like that's cool. I haven't heard that before. And then the vocals started, and I was even more like, and at first I didn't know if I liked it. That was the interesting part. Is at first I was like, the instrumentation is amazing, but the vocals are throwing me hard right now. I don't know if that's like, and but I put the song down and I could not stop thinking about it. And it was that emotional pull that you mentioned that I was eventually lured into this album simply by like some of that stuff was just in my head.
Yeah, it's like there's sprinkled across the three Lord of the Rings movies. There's a situation where a character is like looking at something or walking in the direction of some, or going to and it's like, don't do that, don't do
totally.
that.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to do that, and they do it anyway. Like it's sort of similar. Like I don't know. But this was I was very pleased that you put this on your list because
It had to make it.
Yeah.
It was a gut
and
feeling.
I'm not sure if it'll happen tomorrow or next week, but I am definitely going to give this one a revisit.
Great.
And
Awesome.
I'll be curious to check elsewhere in their catalog too, because it was fun. So 8 days after this record comes out, your number 3 record comes out, which
No
is
way.
Songs for the Deaf, Queens of the Stone Age.
Oh hell yeah.
So
That's cool.
it was let's see here. August 19th of 2002 for Turn On the Bright Lights, and August 27th
Yeah.
of 2002 for Queens of the Stone Age.
That.
And I had this feeling when I got to this one. I mean, I know they've come up, but I was wrong. The feeling I was having was I think somebody had chosen this record, and that, but I was wrong, and I was thinking of Queens of Stone Roses, and that person had 2 Stone Roses records on their list, and so I got to this, and I was like, I don't know if anybody has actually had. I can't remember. I should. If anybody's actually had a Queens of the Stone Age album on their list, which is surprising to me. So, but I put it on, and 14 tracks, 67 minutes, another long one. And it's the 3rd of 8 that they put out, and the first one to feature Dave Grohl, which I don't think I think I knew that he had been in their circle at some point, but I, like, as a fact, kind of, lasted in my brain for as long as a bird is sitting on a branch and then flies away.
Fair enough.
So I was like, what?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that does. And I mean, it's palpable. Like you hit go, and it's like, dang, okay. Let's see here. How'd you get turned on to these guys? And you do, I think you've already said that of all the artists on your list, their discographies pretty well. So what was your intro to these guys? And talk to me about not only this one, but some of their other stuff.
Yeah. I'm actually glad that's how you asked it, because I was going to talk about other stuff. But yeah, so for this one, it wasn't an algorithm thing. My dad, I had already heard No One Knows, second track.
Yes, of
Yeah.
course.
And
is that dun, 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 dun,
Yeah.
dun? I was like, yeah, I know that too.
I'd heard it on the radio. I had heard it in a lot of video games growing up.
Really?
Yeah, it's in a shocking amount of racing games. Anything that involves driving, there's a lot of Queens of the Stone Age going on.
Yeah.
This is definitely what I would call a driving album. There's a lot of times where I could see someone getting a speeding ticket, especially in that first half. It's
Costly
just
one.
brutal.
Yeah.
But yeah, so my dad had reminded me of them. I had heard No One Knows before, but I think I was digging into some similar music. I think maybe some Foo Fighters, some Dave Grohl related stuff.
Sure.
And he was like, oh, well, he's in Queens of the Stone Age and he does drums for them. And I was like, Dave Grohl on drums? And now I come to find that's like his main thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I listened to No One Knows again. I was like, cool. What else? I was like, I've heard it already. And I've heard Go With The Flow, which I guess was my jumping out of the box. Like it wasn't No One Knows. It was a different song. Also kind of a hit from them, but one that I hadn't heard yet. And I loved it. And you mentioned towards the beginning, first record. that I was really invested in.
Which I don't mean vinyl.
Right.
You know,
Yeah. Just first like album in general.
and record are synonymous to
Yeah,
me.
It was this one.
Okay.
Yeah. So like I was listening to like just single songs leading up to this thing, and then eventually I was like, I really need to hear the big picture here. There's
Interesting that
way
you
more
had
to
that
this.
curiosity.
Yeah. And
Some people could have been like, I've heard all the tracks, I'm going to move on. But I think there's some value in
right.
consuming it that way.
Yeah. And so I'm pretty certain this was like the first thing I listened to front to back, and was just like, there was a gut feeling that this was about to be my favorite band. And for many years, yes, like number one.
Similar thing. I mean, I broken record here, but I mean, like, you don't meet diehard fans of Queens of the Stone Age every day, but when you do meet one, like, they are,
Devoted.
Yes.
Regardless of
Yeah.
what comes out. Yes. Yeah.
So, jumping off point, and then
Yeah, so other works, I think after this, I immediately started hearing some stuff from the album after called Lullabies to Paralyze.
yeah,
Which that term, Lullabies to Paralyze, is mentioned in the hidden track right here. I don't know
okay,
if you heard
okay.
Mosquito Song when you listened to it.
I did, yeah.
But one of the last lines is Lullabies to Paralyze, and I don't know if that was planned or if they were just
Right.
like, hey, that was cool, let's name the next
Right.
album. Because that phrase doesn't happen in the second album. So
Rush
it's interesting.
has did some funny things like that,
Yeah.
where it's like, this song is, section 6 of chapter 44 in a franchise that's got 12 installments.
Yes.
And also it's the title of a record we put out 14 years later. And it's like, wait, what happened there? Not particular, I'm not speaking in factual details there, but
it's just like, where on the timeline are we?
Yeah,
right now?
exactly.
So, but yeah, and so I started listening to that second record. It's pretty similar to this one.
Okay.
Dave Grohl no longer on drums. It's instead Joey Castillo.
okay.
And this is probably the band I know the most about, like, historically
Okay.
and lineup wise. Like, I can tell you, like, all the
That's really the point that I wanted to make about the fan base, because they've had some parts come and go.
It's been taken apart and
Yeah.
rearranged. Yeah, and
But the feel and the sound has always kind of been there,
they
though.
didn't really lose a lot. Yeah, and I just love their whole body of work. After this, Nick Oliveri, the bassist, was kicked out due to some drama. Dave Grohl left to refocus on Foo Fighters. This band was actually his escape from Foo Fighters when he was having hardships with them early on. To many people's shock, when Foo Fighters started, they didn't really get along.
I did. Yes, yeah, that's news to me.
And they're all brothers now. They all love each other, but when they started, it was tough to put things together because there was a lot of people coming and going in and out of the band, and Dave couldn't decide what he liked or how he wanted it to sound, and it was tough because he was coming out of Nirvana. He didn't know what to do, and
Yeah.
it's a tricky thing. Like, what am I going for now? I'm obviously not trying to be Nirvana too,
Right.
but what can I do about this? But yeah, so Dave Grohl went to focus on more Foo Fighters stuff after this record, and Josh Homme, the vocalist, and Mark Lanigan, who is in this picture right here, who is you hear him on vocals sometimes through this record. He's got the more grizzled voice, he sings some of the heavier stuff.
Why is his name familiar to me? Has he been in other stuff?
He's a songwriter as well, and he is on a lot of albums. Nothing that I can name at the moment.
Right.
But he also recently passed away.
Oh, no shit.
But yeah, it was very sad. Like, the whole Queens of the Stone Age community was ripped up about it because he was a main songwriter. Like, Josh Homme was a songwriter for a lot of this, but he was like the arranger for a lot of this earlier stuff.
Interesting.
And so he had a huge hand in putting it together and creating that foundation that they have. And so after this, they brought on Joey Castillo for drums, or I think it's Joe Castillo, I forget the exact first name. Nick Oliveri on bass was replaced by a multitude of people who just came in and out of sessions. There's a lot of different bassists on that second album. Primarily, though, Troy Van Leeuwen who is a guitarist. He's probably been in every band under the moon, but he's just that kind of guy that people call, and he does the session, and like he's always around and he's always doing stuff. Troy Van Leeuwen's also a former member of Failure.
Oh wow.
And he played on he toured with them on Fantastic Planet.
Okay.
But yeah, just a little connection there. And then so yeah, it was Troy Van Leeuwen on bass, and then lineup flourished from there, and nowadays it's pretty different. Again, Troy Van Leeuwen has stayed since then, since about 2004, 2006-ish. And now it's John Theodore on drums from the Mars Volta.
Okay.
And then Michael Schumann on bass, who's the youngest member. He's like in his 30s. And he just got swept up. They enjoyed him, and so. But yeah, so I shot off to that next album, and then the next, and then it grew from there. Dave Grohl returned in 2013 to record a couple songs after Joey Castillo left. So that's like one thing that happened. But
Yeah.
yeah, they released an album this year.
Is it any good?
It's solid.
Nice.
Very good.
Is it stuff that Lanigan recorded before his passing, or somebody else?
Lanigan was not involved with this recent album, nor their 2017 album.
Okay,
So I believe his last songwriting venture with them was 2013.
I see.
Which was an album called Light Clockwork.
Okay. So, I'm not particularly proud of what I'm about to say here, but
Go for it.
there is almost an inherent, skepticism if somebody gives me 5 records that I've never listened to before. I think that if I discover that I'm particularly fond of one of them, I'm like, wow, that was a pleasant surprise. But they can't all be amazing.
Oh, sure.
Right? Like everybody's list of 5 or 3 or whatever, and so if I find something particularly enjoyable, I'm like, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a dog or 2 on the rest of the list. So we started in 96 and we leapt forward and hung out in 2002 for 2 records, and now another 6-year leap to 2008 and Station, Russian Circles. And so we're 3 for 3 in pleasant surprises. And I was like, this must be where, this stuff's not quite as good as the rest of it. And I was wrong.
So, okay, so your point is it's good, like across the board, you enjoyed.
Yeah.
Cool.
And, that's... there's some kind of insecurity or shame in not like there's awesome bands and awesome records out there that I didn't know about. It took somebody else sharing music, so interesting. This is 2 of 8, 6 tracks, 43 minutes, and back to our little genre thing, post metal.
Yeah.
And I was like, what does that even mean? What are we talking? It's not metal. I mean, Metallica and Sabbath and Iron Maiden.
That,
no, it's not. And I don't know that it's important to distinguish that, yet here we are distinguishing it.
Sure. Yeah.
But name taken from an ice hockey drill.
I'm so glad you brought that
which,
up.
I play hockey every Wednesday out in
Really?
Independence. Yeah.
That's amazing.
And so I'm like,
yeah. So
props before I hit play.
Yeah.
And then I hit play, and I was like, I like this a lot. Like, but how? How did you discover these guys?
Curveball, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I have to appreciate the Russian Circles understanding that term, just because it's cool that you know what that means, but it's a part of their backstory. The drummer and the guitarist, Dave Turnkrantz and Michael Sullivan,
St. Louis roots somewhere in there.
Yeah, they used to be on a hockey team together.
Okay, nice.
So that's where they put the name together. But this came around. It's a semi-algorithmic discovery,
Okay.
I guess. So I say that because my dad and I were both were fresh out of some Via Luna shows, my brother's band, and we were listening to a lot of math rock music. Some other bands that fall under that umbrella. I don't know. It's all like very weird names. There's a
But
band.
it's basically prog rock, right?
Yeah,
it's sort of time signature stuff. And
I like to describe it a lot of tapping. Like imagine like that really textural
Yeah,
sound
yeah.
on the guitar. It's a lot of that, and
Okay.
it's a lot of crazy drums. And so bands like there's a band called L1011. There's a band called Feed Me Jack. There's a band called Junior Clooney and a band called Legrand, both of which my brother's band has played with. But we were really into these bands, and come to find there is actually a link or a sonic link from math rock into post rock, which is a very vague term. And post rock is like math rock, but slowed down, a little bit more abstract, and more of a soundtracky kind of feel.
Interesting.
So it's a good example of a band that pioneered that genre would be Explosions in the Sky.
Okay.
Who I saw in St. Louis. They started in the 90s.
Okay.
But this very textural guitar work, very building, very proggy sort of, like we're talking long songs, we're talking a huge payoff. Like,
Yeah.
And similar to kind of what you hear for some of these songs.
I mean, again, with the consistency on so many different levels. Campaign is the opener, and I was like, that was fucking amazing.
Beautiful song.
And then
Yeah.
Harper Lewis, great title. And then I was like, oh, and that's track 2, I believe. And it's like, oh, this one's good. And then I just quit making notes. I was like,
I just need to hear it now.
dude. Well, I mean, I'm always hearing it,
Yeah.
but it's like, I think put yourself in a spot where it's like, I want to find some strong talking points. And then it's just like, the whole thing is,
Now it's just working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and so just a very, very pleasant surprise.
Yeah, yeah. And so eventually we started listening to like just math rock playlists, whether it's on Spotify or Pandora or YouTube and stuff, and just like shuffles, like radios that are just shuffling these songs out. And eventually it just started getting like some post-rock songs got dropped in there, some slower tracks. And then post-metal sort of builds itself off of post-rock, so it's like heavier post-rock. You know? Yeah. And so eventually they came
For the record, I studied psychology in college and was like, what am I going to minor in? Is it going to be Spanish? Is it going to be literature? Is it going to be communication, English communication? And I ended up minoring in American literature. And so it's like, we work, I don't know where it's Beowulf is where it's, writing begins. And then you work all the way up through, the 1800s, and you finally get to something that's, relatively recent, and it's, World War I, and it's modernism. And then by the time it's World War II, it's postmodernism. And I was like, I don't understand what's happening. Like what, modernism, like World War I was the first time planes were involved in war, I believe. And so like it makes sense. It's modern, and then now we're beyond modern.
Yeah.
So, but it's still sort of like, I'm always checking like, a compass and a map to be like, well, how did we get to post? Okay, cool. But,
yeah. It's a great, that's an awesome like anecdote on a similar area where it's like the word post gets sort of inserted. But yeah, so we heard this came along the shuffle at some point.
Okay.
It was probably Harper Lewis. That's their hit.
Okay.
Who
is that To Kill a Mockingbird's author? I think so.
I believe so.
But I love when, again, track listing, track sequence. I love when a track title is a known person's name or a non-known person's name, like Alice or whatever. She was whoever she was in my life, or if it's funny or unique. So anyway, so you and your dad are seeing your brother play, and shortly thereafter, this gets dropped in your lap. Am I recounting that correctly?
Pretty much, yeah.
Wow.
We had been listening to the related genres
Okay,
just at
okay.
home and in the car and stuff.
Yeah.
And this came around, and I vividly remember, hearing one of their songs. It was either in the car or like in the garage.
Sure.
On that same
That
sound
would make
system.
the sensitive guy that I am. That would make them or that song or that record or all the above special to me.
Yes.
If I just
Yeah.
saw my brother's band play a show with my dad, and
Oh
anyway.
yeah.
Well, I thought you said curveball. I was I had eyed your last release as what looked like, if we're getting Scoob and the gang in here to solve this mystery, what looked like the curveball. And I don't know if I was right or wrong.
Sure. Could be a little bit of both.
But it's a 10-year leap from Station in '08 to No Trail and Other Unholy Paths, which is a really sexy album name.
Yeah.
Jayle. Am I saying that right?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the third listing if you go to the bottom of his Bandcamp. I don't love that Bandcamp appears to not allow one to categorize singles versus LPs versus EPs. It's all just kind of up there in, I guess, whatever order. So anyway, this looks like the third thing that he put on his Bandcamp page. So I don't know if that means it's his third album or...
It was, I want to say it's probably his second official studio
Okay,
release.
okay.
He has a lot of demo albums
Sure.
on Bandcamp that may sort of come out in between there.
Yeah.
One tiny note about Station
Yes.
prior to this is...
I didn't mean to
you're
abruptly
okay.
exit
You're
from
totally
it.
fine. It was one thing I wanted to include in there is like Russian Circles were... I mean, technically Via Luna was, but Russian Circles were my first like major hook into entirely instrumental music.
Okay.
Which became a huge part of my listening habits afterwards.
Sure.
And for a time, I almost didn't even listen to things with vocals.
Right.
Because I had gotten really sucked into instrumental storytelling and seeing what an artist can do with simply their tools
Yes.
and not their voices.
It's very, very studious, musically of you to do. I mean, I love the idea of kind of going so far down that when you come back up, you're like, what's this person singing for? I'm trying to, get these words out of here. I'm trying to.
A member of
Joking,
Russian
but-
Circles said something similar.
Oh,
in
funny.
An interview. Yeah, he was like, "That's kind of like why they do what they do," and they want to sort of create a time and a place with their music, and sort of you may have noticed on that record that a lot of songs sort of bled into each other.
Yes.
There was a lot of like seamless transitions.
Yeah, and I think there's a pair of songs that back to back are like 8:43 runtime. When I was writing that down, I'm like, wait a minute, that was the runtime of the previous song, and I'm like, wow, they are actually both 8:43.
Yeah. But yeah, that was just the note there is like
Sure.
that sort of sprung me into another listening.
Well, this made us, I believe, 5 for 5 for kick-ass openers, because the way this record starts is phenomenal.
Cool.
Who the heck is this guy? Give me what you got.
It's probably the smallest artist out of the 5 that I've
Right.
chosen here. Jayle is the stage name of Evan Patterson, and
Okay.
he is a songwriter out of Louisville, and he does this whatever you describe it as. It's really I've seen this music here described on reviews and on Spotify as doom folk.
Okay, so
for our
for
list
all
of
of the
genres
energy
here.
that we've given the idea of genre and sort of if you're a music lover and somebody that wants to always be learning and like it's sort of important to to keep up with new genres unfolding, etc. But it's also a little bit laughable.
Right.
And so then I get here and I'm like, I need a word. Like, give me a word for what this is. I don't know where to put it. You know what I mean? Which is fine.
Sure,
Like, I don't
absolutely.
actually need.
It's actually
But yeah, like whatever this
yeah,
is.
it actually could be it's a compliment to the music where you can't be like, I don't know what this is actually. Is this folk?
Yeah.
But yeah, so story behind my discovery.
Yes.
This is the only band out of the 5 that I discovered live first.
Okay,
I
how?
did not hear them online or anything. I saw them opening for Russian Circles.
Oh wow. What an
Weird,
odd.
right?
That's the curveball to your curveball.
Yeah. Exactly. So I saw that it was at Del Mar Hall, St. Louis.
Okay.
And I came in. They weren't on the bill.
Oh.
It was actually Windhand in Russian Circles, and Windhand is a heavier band, kind of like Russian Circles, more sort of like, to add to our list of genres, sort
Right.
of sludge metal.
Okay.
Nothing.
Ooh. So
Yeah.
you got to wear a poncho to listen to that one. Get some of it on you.
But I thought it was just gonna be them two, and I was looking forward to it. But no, these guys were up on stage way before the start time. Like,
Okay.
the show starts at, let's say, I don't remember specifically, but the show starts at 7. They're playing at 6:45, and I don't know who these guys are. There's about 5 of them up there.
Okay.
And they're all in these dirty black suits and boots. And there's no lights. There's no like fancy stage lights. It's all just lanterns and little like lamps like on the floor. And all you see is just the light coming up and illuminating their faces very slightly.
Sounds like. Did you ever see the Alice in Chains Unplugged?
Yeah.
The way
It
that.
felt like
Yeah. Okay.
very
Cool.
unplugged. And they're in there. And I go in there mid-song. I don't know what song's playing when I get in there, but it's probably something from this, because this was around the time this record came out.
Yeah.
And they were playing it, I think, in its entirety, because they want you to digest that as like a full story.
Sure.
But it was these guys, and it was who I didn't know at the time was Evan up front, and he had, he had a guitar. He's huge. He's like 6'8" or something. He's up there and he's like towering over the audience. He's got this giant guitar, and he's like just like those vocals he has. I don't know how you describe them, but he's singing that way, and the bassist back there is like lost in it and just like totally transfixed on rhythm. And there's 2 drummers, one of them who's on like auxiliary percussion. He's got like a tambourine and like this not sure what it was, but it was a bongo type drum. It was very large, and he was like sort of padding on it and tambourining, and there was a guy on a little keyboard back there noodling around, but they were all completely into it and invested, and there was this immediate like pull. And I just like could not take my eyes away. It was this really weird live experience where they had entranced me.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there and I'm listening to his stories. I'm listening to him sort of sing, like he's talking through something, but he's musically working his way through it. And I don't know, that's really it. I'm just like there, and I'm like,
How
Hey, yeah.
did you put a pin in who they were for when you left that venue and returned to your normal
I
life?
had to do my research because they didn't announce themselves at the end.
Seriously?
Yeah, the last song he was like, this one's called Cemetery Rain, and they played it, which is on this record.
Yes.
And they ended it, and he's like, thank you. Gone. Leave. I had to like look at... I had to take to the forums and take to the Setlist FM and that stuff and like find like what happened at Del Mar Hall, who was there,
That is
because people
really
document that
appealing.
stuff. Yeah, people like keep track of that stuff, and
Yeah.
I'm like, who was the unknown opener at Del Mar Hall? I need to figure out who these men were in black suits.
I need
Like,
$6 back because I got ripped off part of the openers.
I was so sad that I didn't see the full set.
Right?
I saw probably 3 or 4 songs, and which was enough. But
Have you found? Did you look to see if there was a recording?
Couldn't find anything from
Okay.
that particular show.
Yeah.
But eventually I stumbled across the name. Like it was Jayle. Like they were added onto the bill last minute because they were in town, because they had just got done with a tour prior. And they're good friends of Russian Circles. They're under the same record label.
Cool.
And so they were connected that way. And I think Russian Circles were like, we have some time here. Do you guys want to hop on? You're already here. You've got your gear. It was like an impromptu thing. They got the venue to approve that apparently.
Wow.
And that's just what I hear. I have no idea. They could have been on the bill way earlier, and people are just making it sound cooler.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I listened to this afterwards, and it really didn't seem like something I'd be into. I was transfixed by that live set, but I also couldn't tell if I liked it. It was weird. I was like, that was insane, and I've never seen anything like it. But
Well, for me,
can't
looking
tell.
at your list of 5, I don't know.
It's a weird one.
I don't know what they're gonna be. I don't know what any of this is gonna be. I mean, Queens of the Stone Age. Sure, I have an idea, but having listened to it now, I mean, I would say it stands out as the one record that's more different than the other 4, if that makes sense.
I see that. Yeah.
But a lot to like about it. Even that story, all the mystery, is kind of I like that a lot, and we need not necessarily more people or artists like that, but definitely, we need to turn the collective volume down on where's my notoriety? When's my break? Well, me.
Sure. Yeah.
A little bit of that goes a long way in my book.
Oh, yeah.
As far as people and human behavior goes. So,
Yeah.
very cool stuff.
Thank you. Yeah. And I'm also pretty sure I have these all on vinyl. as
Nice.
well.
Okay.
So I am completing the important collection.
There you go.
For sure.
You had a couple honorable mentions. Wonder What's Next by Chevelle from 2002. There's a dude on here that had a Chevelle record who I knew the name, but they are not a small sound. Big energy, no shortage of intensity.
Heavy. Yeah.
So yeah, tell me about Wonder What's Next.
So that just very nearly made this list. It almost went in place of Jayle.
Oh dang! I'm glad you did it the way you did it.
And it didn't, because Jayle was one of the first records that really inspired me to create by myself.
Cool.
Or with other people. It doesn't have to be
Sure.
exclusively solo, but there was something about the intimacy of their show and the simplicity of it, the hypnotism of it, and how it was, they could drone an A for 3 minutes straight and just tell me something, and I will be there to hear it.
Wow.
And that's what made me realize that that was another thing that showed me restraint.
Oh yeah, of course.
And I was just like,
Way to bring that full circle. That's
yeah,
good stuff.
it's not always about, can I fit this whole scale into my song?
Right.
What can I tell with this song, with as little input as possible, to just get it across, And I get a lot of that from this album. It's a storytelling album for sure, and so, but yeah. So with Chevelle, almost ended up in that place. It just because it's up there with Turn on the Bright Lights and Songs for the Deaf as sculptors in my sound. I feel that pretty much all 5 of these albums I looked at as textbooks for my foundation as a musician.
Cool.
And so that's a similar thing where that record, the Chevelle discography, I'm
First.
all into it.
Yeah.
And they simply haven't released an album that has failed me.
Okay.
Like, and it's and it goes for a great deal of these bands.
Yeah.
But it's just their consistency is unbelievable. It does. I mean, one thing that does help is they were signed to a very lengthy record deal that obligated them to consistency, which they are now free of.
Cool.
And have a new record coming soon independently, away from the record label. But it still sounds. They've given some teasers on social media, and it sounds the same as they've
cool.
always done. So maybe
They will
it's just
continue
what
to
they
not
do
fail
well,
you.
Yeah. But yeah, just a consistent band that I hope to see live again in September.
Nice.
I'm seeing Queens of the Stone Age and Chevelle back to back.
Oh, cool.
At Starlight in September.
Ooh.
2 different days,
Yeah,
right next to each other.
Okay.
It'll be fun. And so, but yeah, that album was sort of forged my love for heavier music. It reinforced my love for bands like Tool and A Perfect Circle and stuff like that. And I discovered a song from that album in particular as early as middle school when I heard The Red the first time.
Okay.
Which is their hit, I think.
Uh-huh.
A friend showed me that song and I really enjoyed it. Didn't actually figure out the album it was from until way later.
Right. Well, then you see you've gone and done all this, and then you pull the rug out on us completely and shoot us back to 1969 within the court of the Crimson King, King Crimson, who is just, I mean, they've always been right there. Like in the music circles that I have been in and out, they're always just right there, and I've just never gone over. Is Robert Fripp? Is he part of King Crimson?
Yeah, he's the guy.
He's the guy.
I mean, that's like he's the only guy who's been there.
Okay.
The whole time.
Okay. But you know, a lot of folks, music fans and musicians alike, I think are quick to say what you just said. He's the guy. Like, you check him out. I just haven't done it. How in the world did you, at 22 years of age, how is this in your honorable mentions? Is this a dad? Or
I'd heard their name a lot, and I happened to have learned one of their. I was assigned one of their songs when I was a student at School of Rock.
Sounds like a great teacher. Must have assigned that to you.
Yes, it was a song called "Three of a Perfect Pair" from one of their '80s records. They released 3 albums that were sonically and visually connected in the 80s. It was It was like a trilogy.
Nice.
With the same lineup, and they've had like 10 lineups. It's crazy. But same lineup. It's what some consider their hop onto the new wave train, because they took a lot of those sounds, sort of the synthiness and the chorusiness of the new wave sound, and applied it to their sort of prog rock side of things.
Yeah.
But anyways, I learned that song from them, so that's where I learned of their name.
Right.
Was that Three of a Perfect Pair song, a crazy difficult song on bass.
I bet.
A huge learning curve for me, and I ended up finally playing it live with School of Rock later on, and like the name was just in my head after that.
Okay.
And eventually they put all of their music out on streaming services, which is a newer development, similar to Tool. Tool and King Crimson both around the same time decided, hey, maybe it's time to get into the internet.
Right.
And not because they were missing out, because they're all millionaires already, you know.
Right.
But they are sort of losing a certain demographic.
Yeah.
From, you know, and so.
And that's like, you know, you talked about whoever it was that came back and were pleased to know that folks had stuck around, and there were new folks.
Oh yeah.
To the mix.
Definitely.
I forget who.
Failure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, you got
same.
You definitely subject yourself to missing a generation or two if you just we're not gonna. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and both of those bands, you know, they were very much of the belief of if you want to hear us, you see us live or you buy our records. That's simply how it is.
Yeah.
Which I can't fault them for that.
Right?
No. And so, but yeah, and so they added their stuff, the whole catalog, to streaming, to Spotify, YouTube, etc.
Cool.
And I think that's where I was like, let's see what this is all about. It's a little bit easier for me to access them now. And I listened through that first record, In the Court, and you know, older than a lot of the music I was listening to, obviously. But I sat there and like listened through the whole thing, and I'm just like, Jesus, wow. And I was like, this has every single piece, everything that I've already heard in today's music is here, and it started here. It was me finding the, what do you call it?
Ancestry.
The ancestry, or the
storyline.
equinox, the center of like the sounds that we know today.
Okay.
Because King Crimson were getting popular around the Woodstock era. A very strange time for them to be coming about in, because, you know, a lot of the Woodstock artists were very much like, feel it, you know,
Right.
and like just be one with it,
Right.
and it was very jammy. It's not a bad thing. It's just King Crimson weren't that.
Right.
They were very calculated. They were composers. They went into the studio with the image, and they created very meticulously until it was finished. And with this record in
Tool-esque,
particular, yes,
one could
very
argue.
much so. Similar mindsets in the idea that it's not out until it's perfect.
Right. Right.
And it's done when it's done. If we don't finish it, then you simply won't hear
Yeah.
it. That's how it is. And with them, I heard so many, like, what stuck out to me right away was the bass playing, the percussion, the drums, and what sound to be strings, like orchestra, but it's actually a mellotron, which King Crimson had popularized the use of the mellotron.
Right.
And they had brought this. They couldn't afford a full-on orchestra. They had a few horn players that they mixed in there. You hear a flute solo and stuff like that. But they couldn't afford a full-on
Sure.
concerto, and they were like, okay, there's this new technology. It's very expensive, but it creates those sounds for you, and it's in the form factor of a piano.
Right.
And so they brought that in, and they experimented with it, and that's one of the identifying factors of that album, is the very mellotron forward
Okay.
production.
Interesting.
Those sort of semi-fake strings you hear in there, like, you can tell it's either just a really low-quality mic or totally synthesized. You know, that's the immediate thought I had.
Okay.
I was like, I don't believe that's a real string section. I feel like it would be more upfront.
Right.
And it's not. And so, but I'm forgetting a lot of the lineup at that time because they've changed so much, but their bassist was also their vocalist at the time.
Oh, interesting.
And it was impressive to me, just the playing and the singing at the same time. Absurd to me. I mean,
a different-
back to Rush.
Different style. I mean,
Absurd, yeah.
I think any person that can sing while playing an instrument is just you're cut from a different cloth. Like,
Yeah.
and and should be applauded. Because it's they're definitely two skill sets, and to sort of carry them both at the same time is not everybody can do that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, totally agree. But
great list. I loved your 5 and your honorable mentions. Got a few goofy ones to wrap up with. And Chowk, CHOWK, Jason Bice, Dane Bridges,
Zach Hodson.
Instagram Jason has a Bandcamp, but Chowk does not yet.
Chowk does now,
Does?
I believe.
Does,
it
okay.
should be in the link tree on the
Okay.
Instagram
Okay,
page.
perfect. Link tree on the Instagram page. Excellent. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate the time. This has been very fun.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. These are I've never asked a 22-year-old these questions before, so who knows? They might fall flat on their face. But if you're given the gift to visit your past self at any age, your choice, what age are you choosing, and what are you saying?
That's huge. I think it would be around, I want to say, the range of like 16 to 18.
Okay.
When I was really, really stressed about not only school, but relationship troubles and sort of a handful of hardships hitting all at once. And what would I say to myself about that?
If you're saying anything, what would
Yeah.
it be?
I guess simply put, it's just gonna be okay.
Right.
I mean, like, it's I
Perfect.
guess that's very simple, but it all just feels so terrible in the moment, you know. And in that time I was just so, you know, blinded by a lot of the stuff going on that I could have never imagined things going well later, you know.
I hear you.
And like I would have never even imagined me succeeding at an instrument. That wasn't even in the picture
Right,
until
right.
like 2019.
Right. Wow.
Right? Which, yeah. And so I guess just simply it's gonna be okay, and it's really not as bad
Right.
as it seems.
Yeah. Complete this one for me, if you would, please. The world would become an immediately better place in which to live, if only.
If only people could listen a little more.
I love it. Perfect. You get the opportunity to have lunch with anyone, dead or alive. Who are you choosing and why?
Dang it. That's a tie between, and you know, it could turn into a don't meet your heroes kind of situation. I
Right.
have no idea, but either Josh Homme from Queens of the Stone Age or Ken Andrews from Failure.
Okay.
Vocalist of Failure. Probably more likely Ken.
Okay.
It doesn't count at all, but I bumped into him
Oh, nice.
before the show.
Okay.
In Lawrence, and I don't know. He also has a YouTube channel.
Okay.
Where he talks about. He's also a producer. He does studio stuff as well, and he produces a multitude of bands. But he does videos where he breaks down his techniques, and he shows you like live, like the live mixing process. And he's like, "Here's what I did for this band, and here's how I get the distortion tone for that guitar. Here's the program I'm using.
Right.
Here's all the little dials that
Yeah.
I flipped and stuff."
What
Very-
are all those knobs doing?
Yeah.
My God.
Very
There's so
cool
many
stuff.
of them.
I know, right? It's ridiculous. But it was I think through his videos, how much I've heard him talk and stuff, like he just seems like someone that I could
Cool to
resonate with.
shoot the shit
Yeah,
with. Yeah.
yeah.
Nice.
Just seems fun.
You wake up tomorrow to discover that you have inherited $85 million. What's your first move? Assuming you're not already just bathing in millions of dollars.
I don't know.
Okay.
I've
Probably a good thing. Think about it.
yeah. I mean, I have immediately jumped to like, you know, it would be, you know, really easy for me to get my own place and like just be entirely independent.
Right.
You know, at the same time though, I would say, you know, help my family with anything they need, but they are very much well off.
Okay.
And so if they do need anything, I'm there.
Sure. Cool.
But it's not a situation where they're not in dire need.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Which I'm thankful for.
Yeah.
We're very strong.
True or false? It is okay to wear a T-shirt of the band whose concert you're attending tonight.
Oh, like wearing, like if I'm attending a Failure show, I'm wearing a Failure shirt. That's fine.
It's fine?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, Dane Bridges, the 22-year-old Dane Bridges, playing bass in Chowk, Chowk. So there is a Chowk Bandcamp now. and there's an Instagram page you can check out. It's Chowk_band, perhaps. I believe band is in the handle somewhere.
Yeah. If I may shout out some.
Yes, please. I was just about to say, anything else you want to shout out?
So Chowk, definitely, as you've already said. Major Matt Mason USA.
Yes.
You can find that on Instagram and Facebook as well.
You're still a part of that mix.
Still with them, yes.
And everybody's cool with,
Yeah. And still with them. And then two projects I did not get to talk about.
Oh, boy.
I have been, the longest band I've been in is a band called Grindstone, which formed, it's a step that I skipped between around the aging out of School of Rock. I joined with them, former School of Rock students.
Okay.
But that, we mainly do covers right now.
Okay.
We get hired by local venues to do shows. And usually bars, restaurants,
Sure.
parties, stuff like that. Grindstone.band/grindstone_band, whichever one works. It's going to be one
Just
or the
put
other.
Grindstone in the search.
You'll find it. You'll definitely find it. But we're working on original material slowly. Maybe
Okay,
it'll come
cool.
to fruition. And then I've just recently started collaborating with Brian Hurtgens, the drummer of Major Matt Mason's other project called Holiday at Sea.
Holiday at Sea.
Holiday at Sea. And they've been doing their thing for a few years now before me, but I've stepped in on bass stuff. I have no idea if it's a permanent venture,
Sure.
But it is fun, and
That's so cool that you're like open and willing to try all these different things. I think that only leads you in good places, and one of those places is not going to be regret for not giving stuff a shot when it's presented to you. So,
and it's only worked out in positive measures. Like
cool.
It's all just, but yeah. So, I think that's pretty much it. No bookings for Major Matt right now. Keep an eye out. Chowk has a show, multiple shows coming up in September and October.
Okay.
We will be. Do you mind? If
No,
I
please
check
do.
here?
Please do. I was going to ask
because I'm having trouble with the dates.
Yeah.
Chowk is gonna be at Skate Bar. September 9th.
That's right. I did see Jason post that, I believe.
And then we will be at Velo Garage in North Kansas City, Friday, September 22nd.
Not familiar with that one. Are you?
I've played there quite a bit.
Okay.
It's a nice spot in North Kansas City.
Good.
It's a bike shop /bar/music venue. So it's
Okay.
multi-purpose
Yeah.
of sorts. But
Just like Skate Bar,
Yeah.
only
Yeah.
with bikes.
Yes, absolutely. Very similar. I've discovered tons of awesome bands at that place, but those are the two main ones coming up. And then I also have my first appearance with Holiday at Sea is coming up here August 4th, Friday, at Velo Garage as well.
That'll be here in a hot second. I mean, very cool, man. You're a busy fella. It's very cool that you're, sort of wearing all these different hats and trying stuff out and staying busy. I mean, it's productive, it's healthy.
It's very busy.
And I appreciate a not busy person giving of their time. So when it is a busy person and they still are giving of their time, I feel even more honored, even more pleased. Really appreciate you being here. We might need to circle back at some date in the future.
Oh, sure.
If all of these things that you're trying out develop lives of their own and stuff's coming out, or one day you got 5 other records you want to talk about, I'd love to have you back.
Yeah.
So
I could go on about that for a while if
right.
I wanted to. But it was really great. Thanks for reaching out.
Of course.
And doing this, because I mean it is my favorite thing to talk about. I briefly hosted my own like tiny little podcast.
Oh,
where I
really?
talked about records.
Nice.
It was just a thing I did during the pandemic when I was bored. But that was a fun thing. I might pick it up sometime.
Cool.
But yeah, thanks so much.
Appreciate you, man.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Appreciate you.